people come up and they need to speak.
Oh, okay.
We left the seat open for them. It wasn't for your purse.
Oh, yeah.
Good morning,
Give her the eye.
everybody. Welcome to this City Commission workshop. We'll be talking about city fees and changes for those things. I want to recognize we have Commissioner Emmerich is in the room, Commissioner Luke, Vice Mayor McDowell, myself, Mayor Hanks. Commissioner Carrison will be here a little bit later. We have City Attorney Amber Slayton, City Manager Peter Lear. We have our Deputy Chief back there in the back, Morales, Chief Titus for the fire, and we even got Rick Newkirk back there. It's good to have you, sir. Got the pulse on the city. I appreciate that. And we have our Assistant City Clerk, Taylor. Okay, if we could, please, let's stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, let's see. Do we have any public comment?
Yes, we do, Mayor.
Okay, Mr. Duval. Right over here, you know the place.
Dave Duval, citizen of Northport. Yesterday I was here to say thank you for your consideration, for considering me for the Charter Review Board. Unfortunately, I had a prior commitment to some very young citizens at the Shannon Staub Library, and I had to attend to them. They take priority even over the City Commission. But thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
You're going to be great on that, too. Appreciate it.
He was teaching kiddos about gopher tortoises.
Yeah. Let's move on to general business. We have citywide fees discussion. City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor. This is our second meeting related to this year's budget. What we bring to you at this time of year is staff's proposed changes to the citywide fee schedule. You'll see in here that the majority, actually all of the fees related to that are being proposed on one of the attachments relate to Parks and Rec. So Sandy Funheller is here if you guys have any questions to that. The fire department is working on some fees that they're looking at for like their special details, try to make it more in line with similar to like the police department has, as well as their EMS, but those are still being worked on. But the chief is here, he can discuss those with you all as well, so that you can know where he's coming from. But with that,
Will those changes come back in a
Yes.
formal manner
Yep.
at some point? Okay.
oh yeah, all of these are the proposed changes right now. Like I say, the fire chief's working on a couple, but all of the changes will come back in the citywide fee ordinance, so you'll have two readings to look at all of the changes as well as the entire fee schedule. What you have in the backup is the current fee schedule, the list of proposed changes. And then it would show you what the 1920 all the fees would be. So you should have 3 documents in your backup. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to you all to any questions you might have, and we'll go from there.
All right. Show of hands for those that have questions. Vice Mayor.
Well, I have to give props to the communications team because I saw on Facebook the free Warm Mineral Springs Day is in June. So I can cross that question off, and thank you. I'm just wondering, is it going to be like a birthday party, Warm Mineral Springs Day for residents?
For birthday, as far as the city's birthday, the 60th.
I was going to do like a birthday party for the city and free Warm Mineral Springs Day.
Sandy, come on up, she can tell you more of what that event.
Most of these changes are hers.
Yeah, they're all hers. She can give you the details on what they're planning.
She's so high maintenance.
Me? Thank you. Thanks for noticing. Good morning. Right now, the Discover Warm Mineral Springs Day, Sandy Funheller, that'd be me, is going to be similar to last year where it's free admission for Sarasota County residents. We are planning on having a information table there from Parks and Recreation that day. Beyond that, we haven't done a large event for that day. We've just incorporated, like all the other events we've done since the beginning of the year, just celebrating the 60th anniversary.
I did have a lifeguard that I talked to last year And he said that we need to have a few more lifeguards present for that because they were not expecting such a large crowd. Just sharing that little tidbit if you hadn't heard. That's all.
Yeah. And we will talk to Wyatt and Bridget there and make sure that they are prepared for that day.
Make sure their lifeguard carries their
Tube?
board with them. They walk around there and they don't have it with them. It's like life standing there.
We'll bring that to their attention.
I just had a couple things in the fee ordinance, things that I caught that might need to be addressed, and I figured now would be a good time to have that conversation.
Let me ask, are you in the changes one or the whole fee ordinance?
I'm in Appendix A, city fee structure. There's probably
I'm in the first one.
8 pages.
Which one is that on my backup material?
Yeah. 1, 2, or 3.
I don't know. I printed it out.
2019-20 proposed fee changes,
Okay,
2019-20.
it's not the changes to the citywide fee ordinance. It's the one that starts.
What's the ordinance fee schedule?
Yeah, Appendix A. Nope. Let's go down.
Oh, it's the second one?
Pulling up the second one. Appendix A, you said, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, got it.
So the third page, we talk about, God, the lighting is horrible. It's about cancellation due to enrollment. And I wanted to see, is there a cancellation policy if somebody buys a pass for the day to go to War Mineral Springs or the pool? And let's say they buy the pass, they arrive at 1 o'clock, and at 2:30, they have to close everything down because of lightning or inclement weather. Do they then get a pass to come back another time?
Good morning, Tricia Wisner, Assistant Director of Parks and Recreation. No, at this time, both for War Mineral Springs and the Northport Aquatic Center, the operational plan is that we advise that there is not refunds for weather. So we are posting with WeatherBug on our website whether or not there's lightning in the area. People are welcome to, obviously if you have a pass, you can come back same day if the lightning clears, as long as capacity is available. So let's say for some reason I bought a pass, there was lightning, they had to close out the pool, I decided to go get lunch or something else, I can come back in with that pass. However, if it's at capacity, I'll have to wait until the capacity would accept additional people.
So it's not like they buy the pass, inclement weather doesn't clear, they can't come back the next
They
day?
cannot come back
Okay.
the next day, same day, re-entry only.
Okay.
It's the way it works at the Springs, and it works fine.
Yeah, I just wanted to double check that. Do we need to, and this is maybe a legal thing or just informational thing, do we need to incorporate that policy in this fee schedule?
There is some wording about no refunds, and it's more of an operational thing. So we've been following that on an operational level rather than in a fee schedule ordinance. That way it's, we can handle it at staff level.
If you go to where they're talking about discounted admission for, I'm trying to see, there's no page numbers on here, guys, I'm sorry.
What's at the top?
It says Parks and Rec fees, and then it talks about.
Is it the letter G?
G,
Yeah,
yes.
okay.
Down there it says discounted admission, school scheduled educational field trips, students only, $5. Can we give the instructor, can we give 2 instructors free admission?
At War Mineral Springs?
The
Because,
short answer to that is that if that's what you want us to do, yes, we
Yes.
can.
yeah,
And we
Because,
just need to add that.
a lot of times the teachers or instructors, they have to pay for their entry. And they're, I understand it's $5, but they have to probably pay the adult pricing. And they have to be there for the kids. I'm just looking to see if maybe just two instructors can get free admission.
2 instructors per so many children? And we,
I would think they just pay the amount that the student does. instructors.
I would assume
and
that the
adults.
instructors are charging to cover that
Discounted
cost.
student admission at Warm Mineral Springs is specific, the
Because
conversation.
it says per student, and that's when I went, well, what about the instructors?
Okay.
Can we either give them free or make it, that's also for the instructors? You know, we need to do something for the instructors too,
Well,
as
I'd rather,
opposed.
in just my opinion, I'd rather make it the same, because let's say they got 4 instructors, you know, this way.
Two, they get free.
Exactly.
Right,
Yeah, but this way, they're all $5 each.
so
You
maybe
might-
that's
You might have a
the,
parent coming along.
Right,
You know,
as an
so-
extra chaperone or something like that.
that's the word, chaperones, $5. I don't think it should just be for students, is kind of where I was going with that whole.
No.
So the only concern we would have is if, for some reason, we would have a group that has 5 children and 15 chaperones, because it's a great price, and now we're really, just looking at this operationally, we'll have to make sure that we're very clear that, one, it's a pre-scheduled group with maybe a ratio of so many chaperones. So
I'm fine with that, coming up with a ratio, but at least it gives those who legitimately are using it the same fee.
Yeah, and most educational field trips are, 25 students, 2 adults. And I know you have school
We have
home
charter
groups,
schools
and you have the charters,
really
homeschool,
right.
and
so that we
exactly.
but those have to be scheduled ahead of time, I would assume. They can't just show up in a bus and say, hey, we're here. Maybe that's the way you can kind of protect the city and
Or you
say,
Or you could look into it as 1 chaperone per 10
That's-
children.
That's why we're looking for a ratio, so I
Yeah,
think
one,
that.
one for every 10, this way if you got 40 students, you have 4 chaperones.
I would make it less than that.
Less than 10.
In case they're younger children.
Exactly.
So our ratios changed it based upon the age of the child.
Yeah, I wouldn't,
What's the standard?
I wouldn't go over 4 or 5,
'Cause I wouldn't know
actually.
what, I wouldn't know what, I mean, I'd know what to say probably more when they're older, but I wouldn't know.
For our daycare, it varies based on age.
And it would also vary on activity based on this. So a ratio going to a playground is going to be different than a ratio going to a wet facility. So
maybe that's something you guys can look into.
Maybe there's a standard.
just a little bit to see, so we can, and we'll work with Warm Mineral
It
Springs.
sounds like if you all want this, and if that's what everybody wants, if you just we'll go back, research what's normal, what's the normal
That's what
ratio
everybody's looking for. right?
Okay.
for a,
That's
let's say, a
unanimous-
wet versus a park
unanimous
versus.
consensus on that.
Right underneath it, it says Warm Mineral Springs Motel discount, $15. $15 per night, per person, per
It's not a
room,
discount
per.
at the hotel. It's if you're staying at the hotel, this is a carryover from when
Right.
it was all owned by one place. If you stay at the Warm Mill Springs Hotel, you get a discounted entry into Warm Mill Springs.
Your admission fee
Per
is
person.
$15.
Person,
Per person.
that's what's missing then, per person.
I think still open,
Yeah, actually, it's pretty nice.
is it?
But I'm gonna have to throw a whammy in here. We've got other hotels coming into
Yeah.
the area. And are we going to, I mean, because it's not the same ownership, are we gonna honor a discount to only one?
And to be honest, we didn't do a huge overhaul of Warm Mineral Springs fees at this time, based upon the idea that we have a big project coming through. Wanted to mitigate impact until near completion of the project, and then really look at the fee schedule in whole for the new facility.
I would not change it this year, because you have a huge European, population that comes and stays there, and they have had this for years. So I wouldn't mess with it this year, but as other hotels
Mhm.
come, I think maybe we need to look at the same, offering them the same.
I agree with that.
Yeah, I agree.
I'd offer the same, but get rid of this one, let everybody just pay the fee.
It would be operationally difficult to manage, so.
Yeah, we'll have to look into
We'll
that
have to look.
as more
If
hotels come in.
we could do some more research and evaluate that further.
I think the research would be good. I think you'd be surprised at how many come and stay there just strictly for that, and that is an encouragement. So maybe catching the data from the hotel as to how many stay there.
Well, maybe
and
that's
use it.
maybe that's an agreement with the motel itself. You know, maybe the motel subsidizes some of those costs. You know, I mean, why would we just give something free to the hotel or the motel? What are they doing for the Springs? I mean, I know they have people that come and stay, but you know what I mean? And then to bring those fees equal across the board, is everybody pays the same. If a hotel wants to come in, they want to, you know, subsidize some of those fees. Yeah, you know, if the Hampton Inn says, hey, we'll put $5 a person, you know, towards a $15 fee, well, then that's fine. You know, that's the way I would see it, but.
So this is definitely a bigger conversation. We're happy to research it as we move forward, especially as the project continues through as well.
Charter tour groups, the next one down, $15 per person.
Per person.
Yeah, we need to add that.
Okay.
All right, so we already covered about weather closure for the refund policy. Going to the next page. This, I believe, is for the pool. If you go down to resident group rates, it says 15 to 49 people, it's $5 a person. Is that regardless of age?
Yes.
Okay, so that might be something we need to put in there?
Okay.
Because, you know, if they're trying to get 15 kids and they have 4 adults, you know, that, I think that that's important to have in there, but that's just my opinion. Do you need a consensus to add that?
What, to add regardless of age?
Yeah. Or some
Just
kind.
All ages.
Or all ages,
in
yes.
parentheses at the
ages.
Yeah.
title of it.
Okay, and then going down to the very, very bottom, where it has the 1 asterisk, it says proof of residency required for resident rate. We need to add 2 little words, Northport.
Okay.
Proof of Northport
Northport.
residency for resident rates.
Will do.
Because that could be construed as Charlotte County or even Sarasota County, you know. Yeah, we understand it being Northport, but
Well,
Would you rather have City of Northport rather than just Northport?
yeah, but
Makes it a little bit more official.
Okay.
okay, the county is allowed residency at Springs, correct?
but this is for the,
I'm
the
just-
pool.
Right, I'm just making sure
Yeah.
that's clarified that we're not excluding that.
Yeah, but the county residents don't get the discount for the aquatic center.
No.
It's just City of Northport residents.
Just making sure. And we already covered weather refunds. If you go to H, they're talking about the Northport Aquatic Center facility rental outside of normal standard operating hours.
Yes.
There, I don't see any asterisks or anything that says about the Achieve Anything discount. Is that, I remember our discussion about it, that the Achieve Anything discount does not apply, but I didn't see that asterisk or wording in here. I may have missed it, I'm just,
You wanting it to say what in the asterisk?
does not include Achieve Anything,
At
Discount
the,
is not applicable
almost
or
at the
something?
end of the last page, right above refunds, it says, Northport Aquatic Center facility rentals are excluded from the Achieve Anything discount.
do we need to maybe make that an asterisk, so?
I can definitely put an asterisk next to facility rentals up at the Northport Aquatic Center facility rentals. Is that an agreed place?
I think there's,
So,
I hear H, but that's like
H,
three pages.
So
Here, the
the
second page of
disclaimer is at
H.
the last page of H.
on the second page of H, we have the fees for the Northport Aquatic
Yeah,
Center
all right.
facility rental. Vice Mayor was looking for where we specifically state that that does not have the 50% Achieve Anything discount, which is at the end, the first line right above the word rentals. It says that it's not allowed, or not applicable. So we'll just put an asterisk where it says Northport Aquatic Center facility rentals, and then the asterisk will lead to that line down below. And I'll just pull it out separate.
And there's 2 places.
Okay, yes, there was a, yes.
There's 2 places that I,
Perfect.
and that's all I have on this. I just have a couple of general questions. That's all I have on this schedule.
Commissioner Luke?
I'm good. I thought the proposed changes were great. A lot of good thought to it, so I like the changes.
Vice Mayor, you had?
Yeah, I was just wondering, the pool is getting closer and closer to being done. July is going to be here in no time. I'm so excited. When are we going to see some pool sponsorship opportunities for the citizens?
That is, what date are we coming?
We put out a memo to go with the city manager's report. It was due in April, the sponsorship opportunities, to have that information. So that has been submitted. I believe that comes out with all of the list of the update for city manager. So we have what we plan to do for the aquatic center in a memo documented. We also have a tribute wall. We talked about a donor opportunity, like we have the brick pavers. So we have what we call a tribute wall that we have an art company working on a proposal for us. And as soon as we get that a little more fleshed out, which should be probably this week, we plan to put that on an agenda and bring that forward for commission review.
That'll be sooner than later, so that way then we can start generating some money from this.
As soon as we have something, then we'll have to get it into the queue for the agenda and.
They have it done this week. It'll most likely be the first meeting in May. The agenda deadline for it, the second meeting in April is in about 2.5 hours.
So
Well, and I can
it's
make that
something
one.
that will have opportunities at many different levels to have a donation. But it's also considered a piece of artwork that will be on the building. So we'll bring that forward and see what you think.
Excellent. I look forward to seeing all of the opportunities that are out there, so that'd be great. Thank you. Last one, impact fee, mobility fee. I was hoping that was going to be part of this. I'm just wondering, when is that discussion going to take place?
We're working on getting that updated. The impact fees would not be part of this yet because we haven't brought you back the impact fee study and everything. So that's a much bigger schedule, and the impact fees actually aren't in here anyway. They're in a separate impact fee ordinance.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
That would be different than these fees.
Do you have an idea of ETA at this point?
The increase on the general increase that you all discussed will be coming forward for second reading on June 11th. This is the one that we talked about. We had to have a special advertising period for. So I think it's coming back for first reading sometime in May.
Excellent.
It's got 30 or 90
Well,
days.
it's not, it has to be 90 days from advertisement. That's why we know when second reading will be. And as the city manager said, that's part of, I think it's chapter 53. It's not part of the fee schedule.
Yeah, I see fees and just kind of figured, since we're having the discussion, let's bring it out and talk about it. So, are we going, so we're going to just have second reading and then vet that at second reading, or are we going to have a workshop on?
We'll have a first reading also. The second reading is on June
11.
11th.
Oh, okay.
First
Yeah,
one's
first
in
reading will
May.
be some, yeah, we don't,
Yeah.
I'm not sure which.
The exact date off the top of my head, but we know when, like, the city attorney mentioned, we know when the second reading is because there's an advertisement period for second reading. So we obviously have to have first reading sometime before then, but. You would hope.
Gotcha. So it's coming up. Thank you. Mayor, that's all I got for you.
That's all we have.
I'm gonna ask the fire chief to come down so that he can discuss the few that he's going to propose to you all.
guys.
Thank you.
Good job. Heads up, they don't show up in the actual ordinance when it's time to pass it.
Morning. I just had it pulled up on my screen, just switch one and stuff and bump it. No, I have it here. Good morning, Scott Titus for Fire Rescue. How are you all? So The information that we submitted on SharePoint, but we missed an email contact. So what we are proposing this year is, so for our regular fees, obviously we update each year. Every year we look at the FEMA rates for our apparatus. So when we go out and do a standby, there's a certain rate for a fire truck, a ladder truck, an ambulance. Well, yes, for a sporting event, for a request to come by for a special event. Yes, so things that, when there's a special event permit filled out and we go and participate, that's what those are for. And then there's also rates for our personnel. And one of the things that we looked at this year, and you all saw a presentation from the police department on the rates that they proposed. So we looked at the rates that they proposed, and we did calculations of our personnel who are on overtime when they attend those events. And in some of those positions, it was up a little bit. Some of those positions, it was down a little bit. As you know, when we hire back personnel and we schedule those events, there's sometimes we may get different levels of people. So we looked at those rates and we were very comfortable with actually accepting the same rates that the police officers for 3-tiered positions. So the first tiered position would be for a division chief, a battalion chief, a captain, to go out to oversee, like we had at the Braves Stadium where they're coordinating multiple crews. That second level tiered position would be for a paramedic that would be at the events, and then the third tier level position would be for the firefighter EMTs. So we just put those rates in exactly the same as the police department had, and we thought it would be easier for you all as far as discussion goes, and also for anybody putting in a special events permit for requests of, well, why are they different? So in some of those cases, we will gain a little bit. Some of those we will lose a little bit. From the hourly rate, we don't take into consideration all of the back pieces to that for what their benefits are and everything else, but that's just part of what we do in the service that we provide. So we've never really captured all of the costs before, but I think these rates make it a little bit better than what it has been in the past. Yes.
For these special events, the PD is off duty. Are yours off duty also?
No, our people are on duty, and for several different reasons. It's one of those, I don't like to use, it comes out wrong when you say, well, we've always done it that way. I don't like to do that. We look outside the box and think of things, but when we go out to an event and provide EMS coverage, we can't do that independently as an individual, because we still have to work under the medical director's license and do some other things. So what we have done in the past is those people have been, when I say they're on duty, they're assigned by the fire department. They are working and representing the fire department, but they are not our on-duty personnel that are covering stations, if that makes sense. So it's yes.
Okay.
So it's additional coverage. There are some times when the school in the past has called us, or some places have called. They did a special event request, and they said, we really can't. We didn't consider the extra money that would cost to do something like this. And so sometimes we will work with them and say, we can have an on-duty apparatus attend, however, they're call responsive. They would have to stay, would have to be in that station's area. If another emergency call were to come in, they would have to go to it. And so we leave that up to, sometimes when we're working with them, if they can, depending on what the event is, if they can accept that, then we'll do that for them and work with them as far as that goes. Okay.
Thank you for that answer.
Thank you. One of the other difficulties, so there are, just in case it comes up in discussion, there are considerations, and there are some agencies in the past that have done something that is called a Job 2 classification, where they set up a separate medical contract with the medical director. They do some other things, and they hire people independently from the fire department. They still wear the uniform and do things, but they are not on duty, and it's similar to what the police department does. Most of the areas that I've seen when we did research and looked at it, they're okay for the first year, maybe year and a half, but when you have something like the Atlanta Braves come to town and it becomes a routine thing, you have no ability, when the newness wears off of that, a lot of times they have a lot of difficulty getting and providing coverage for those events. And because it's not considered work, and we don't do it through the fire department, they can no longer leverage and say, well, we're requiring it. So we have the ability now, if we don't have coverage, we have the ability through our collective bargaining agreement and everything else to say, well, we don't have people, you're working. So, yes.
You triggered my brain. Do we have like an MOU with the Braves, the county, and us as to coverage of fire and police?
There's, in the actual contract with the Braves, there's statements in there that they'll use our staff they'll make all reasonable efforts, but that they will hire Northport personnel for those events. And that's City of Northport, not Sarasota County, not the Sheriff's Department, not any of the others. It specifically states City of Northport. That being said,
For police? I mean, was fire included in that?
I believe it's all city, but I don't know that it breaks out police alone. I'll have to look at it again, but, they are hiring our personnel, and that's been a discussion that's come up recently, not with Braves, but with others. That being said, we are taking the lead on all of those events. Now, like the fire chief was just mentioning, this could happen with both fire and police. The newness could wear off, and all of a sudden, you don't get enough people, because I'll use police more specifically than fire, because police, it is extra for them. It's a special duty or special detail. They don't have to sign up for it. I can't make them sign up for it. If we don't have, say they need 30 people and only 20 people want to do it, then we will reach out to surrounding agencies to see if they have anybody that wants to do it under our rates. And we would pay that agency. But that being said, right now we had no issues with, we split the first game with the Sheriff's Department. They were in charge of that event. That was an agreement between us and the sheriff that they would take the lead on that one. Future ones, we will be taking it, and we'll coordinate with surrounding agencies. And I say that for, like I said, if it's, the Braves game was big. The Braves made sure that they had enough personnel there, that they, in speaking with the police chief, had more than they needed. In an abundance of caution, they said, they may have said they need 40, when if it was up to us alone, we might have said 30. And those are just fake numbers, but that's
62 security officers there too.
So, it was an abundance of caution on there, and I'm never gonna fault somebody for being overly safe. That being said, if they request 40 people, we're gonna come up with 40 people. They may just not all be City of Northport. We'll offer it to our guys first. They'll have a time frame. You gotta let us know, because we told the Braves we'll come up with 40. If 30 of ours do it, we'll reach out to other agencies. And I have no doubt we'll be able to find the people.
So we're good with jurisdictional,
There's an MOU with all of the surrounding agencies.
has that building been turned over to the county yet? The stadium?
I know that they were working on it. I don't know. I can't answer that, because
That's a little, I mean, it's a county building within our jurisdiction. And so I just wanted to make sure it was clear as to who had the jurisdictional reign.
it's in our, just similar to the county's headquarters is inside the City of Sarasota. So if something happens there, it's a City of Sarasota responsive area. It's in their jurisdiction. That being said, the county's jurisdiction is the entire county. So the Sheriff's Department can go anywhere. But as far as the lead, it's gonna be the City of Northport.
Okay, and that's clear.
Yep.
Okay. Sorry to derail your conversation, but
great question.
it spurred it.
One of the things I wanted to point out, and it was brought up in the discussion, actually it was brought up in the discussion when you had the fee discussion with the police department. There was a reference made, and my recommendation would be that if you want to make it easier. So we use the FEMA rates that I brought up earlier for the apparatus. Those change. They go up and they go down based on years. So you'll see I quoted on this that was submitted. It's a 2017 rate. I think the 2019 just got updated. So we'll change that. Some of those might be up a little and down a little. I don't know if you want to accept the flat rate or if you want to do that annually by making them FEMA rated here. But what we have in there right now is okay. But if you don't want to have to every year look at that, that's what we base it off of.
Do they change the FEMA rates? Like, let's say we approve our fee schedule in June and then FEMA rates change in January. Can we put maybe a caveat that says these are rates based on, and are based on current FEMA rates? That way then if it changes.
That's I think kind of what the fire chief is suggesting is, do you want, like, for instance, right now the FEMA rate we'll say is $41, the 2017 FEMA rate. 2019's come out, they might be $43. Our option is we put the $41 in there, or we can put the most recent FEMA rates is the rate. and put over there as the caveat, the current rate is, but if you adopt the FEMA rates, then it will automatically change as FEMA automatic. We don't have to, for exactly your scenario. We're gonna adopt this ordinance in June, July, is typically when we adopt the citywide fee ordinance. If theirs comes out 2 weeks after you have second reading, we're gonna have to either bring you back an amendment or stick with those rates for the rest of the year. So the suggestion I believe the fire chief's making is, do you want us to have it automatically be tied to the FEMA rates? And have as a caveat, just so that for informational purposes, we can list what the current ones are, but the official rate will be whatever FEMA is when they put out their new one.
The official FEMA rate tied to the official FEMA rate, and then also have what the current rate is. But if that changes, like in January, then
The fee will change.
I'll find out what that schedule is. I don't know if it's I don't know if their fiscal schedule, if it's a January, but I'll find that out, and I'll make sure the appropriate language is added for referencing that. The other recommended change is for EMS transport. We increased $25 for BLS, $25 for ALS1, and $25 for ALS2, and that was based upon looking, you can do a huge macrocosm and look all over the place. We looked local here. We looked at Sarasota and Charlotte County, and we were a little bit in between. So Charlotte County has been, we didn't actually go to their full rate. They've been ahead of us for a while. Sarasota County on 2 of those categories was the same with us, and one of them is our $25 going up is actually, yes.
is the rate based on how, I understand the different transports, but is the rate based on how far you're transporting? So for example, if you have to transport to Sarasota, oh, there's a separate fee.
So there's a flat rate. There's a flat rate fee for each one of those categories, and then there's a mileage rate. Keep in mind, when we apply those rates, that doesn't mean that's what we get paid. There are discounts, Medicare, Medicaid, insurance companies, there are discounts that come through there. That's what those are certainly well within the allowable rates to charge. So most of the time when we get those full amounts, those are a lot of times it's self-pay or really, really good insurance. And then also the mileage rate, we did go up to $10, and that was to match them. We were at $9.50, so it's 50 cents. $10 a mile. Mm-hmm.
For the record, Commissioner Carasone is here.
So I know when you don't deal with and work in those rates every day, people go, wow. Some of the behind the scene things to consider as you look at those, and it doesn't typically become a topic of conversation. Those costs don't actually even still capture the full cost of what it is. So remember, our taxes pay for our service to be here, basically at 24/7 for the EMS side of it. These are user fees, so they're designed to better capture or come closer to capturing what that cost for that transport would be. But they don't take everything into consideration when you think about what it costs for the maintenance of the apparatus, the personnel, whether they're on straight time, whether they're on overtime, all of the equipment, supplies, everything else. So as you all know, you've seen the budget. We don't make money at EMS. It's a service we provide, and we believe that it is the right service to provide. But it's not designed to be a for-profit business. It certainly isn't.
Can you refresh my memory as to why we send the ambulance and the fire truck?
I would love to. It's actually one of the most commonly asked questions, and there are certain types of calls that we're working on right now, a new program through dispatch that will be even more specific. But there are certain types of calls that trigger what we would consider to be a dual response. So that would be an engine response and an ambulance response. And those types of calls would be a cardiac arrest, a severe respiratory call, a traumatic injury call, like a long fall or things like that. And the reason being is 2 people on an ambulance, whether it's a paramedic firefighter and an EMT firefighter, or even 2 paramedics sometimes that we have on the ambulances, they can do everything. 2 people can do everything that 5 or 6 could do. So if you thought about all of us at this table trying to do a job, 2 people at this table probably could do that job, but it would take Right, well, it'll take 4 times as long if we got 8, right? But yes, so the idea is when we're dealing with minutes, seconds, when time counts, you put more people on scene, now you have somebody that's actually starting the IV, you have somebody that's gathering information, somebody that is getting the medications ready and administering those, somebody that's applying the EKG and reading that, somebody that's talking to the hospital, and so it becomes a much more efficient execution of our system. The dispatch is working on right now where when that phone call comes in, right now if it comes in as a cardiac call or respiratory call, automatically they immediately, while the call taker is taking that information, it's being passed over to dispatcher, the dispatcher go ahead and dispatches those units. So an ambulance and a fire truck are both running emergency mode to that call. One of the things they're working on right now is to begin asking more questions. And as we get more on that information, I'll provide it to you all, but it's been applied in a number of areas throughout the county. It's country, and it's very successful where when that initial call comes in, they send the ambulance immediately running in emergency mode. And they begin to ask a couple other questions. They may send the fire truck still, the fire truck might be going non-emergency mode. As they get more information, they might say, yeah, okay, we'll kick it up to emergency mode and keep going. Or they might say, you're not needed. So they got half a mile away, they turn around and they came back to the station. So it does a number of things. It reduces wear and tear on the apparatus. It reduces the risk to our responders and to the public and things like that. And we find some efficiencies there. So it's a great question that you ask. The other time that happens when it's not those certain types of calls is, as you all know, some of our fire apparatus are advanced life support certified. They have a paramedic. They can do everything that an ambulance can do. So let's say that transport ambulance is at the hospital at SMH Northport. A call comes in off of Northport Boulevard. A ladder truck that's assigned to that station can respond with a paramedic with all of the things, and it will go to the call and treat the patient until a transport unit can show up, take over care, and take them to the hospital. So that's the other time, that if they're responding from outside of the area, that's the other time you would see a dual response, maybe for a call that's not quite as serious. And this new system that we talked about actually will do some things where if time is not an issue, so say it's just somebody that needs help off the floor, there's no injury, there's somebody with them, they're able to talk to 911. In the past, that would have triggered a dual response because of coming from outside the area, whereas now they might go, well, it's okay if they wait 4 or 5 minutes. So you begin looking at response times might be different, but it's not critical and they're okay. And again, a lot of that falls on that training of that emergency communication center and the dispatcher, or the fire truck could go and they're just not going to run emergency, they just drive over.
I can see a definite difference between a call to a home or business versus assisted living, or something similar to that, because you do have more staff there that can work with you, and that unknown that you're going to would.
And so the staff at those facilities are trained, they work under a medical director like we do. It's a different level of training and a different type of care that they provide. So very often, even though they're there, they're great with providing information and doing some other things, but unless it's truly a cardiac arrest where they're just doing CPR or something else, many of the things that they're doing are different considerations than what we are. So although it does help to have them there, it doesn't necessarily alleviate sometimes our response for additional people.
It's interesting what the chief's talking about as far as the dispatch questions and everything. When we were at National League of Cities in Los Angeles, one of the things that I did there was take a tour of their emergency operations as well as their dispatch facility. They have that already. And they have on their wall the giant TV of all the different calls, and it is broken into level of need, or whatever the term they use. But their dispatchers are very different. They actually, it's a firefighter EMT that's answering the call out there. Their dispatch is 100% staffed by firefighter EMTs or paramedics. It's not.
Did they explain the purpose and reason for that?
They briefly went into it. They did it for a few reasons. One is the skill level of the dispatcher. Of you have medical advice being able to be given, as well as training for the firefighter EMT. It's another area that they can learn and gain experience from. But I mean, Chief may know a whole lot more about it, but it was very interesting.
The area where the city manager went, that dispatch center actually resides in and falls underneath the authority of the fire department. And it is that way in some cities. Here, ours falls under Sarasota County, which is actually falls under the sheriff, not under fire. So although fire is a contingent of that. This system, we have worked towards, actually, we've been ready from our end, we've been ready on what those different types of responses, they're Alpha, Bravo, Charlie, Delta, Echo. That's how they break them down into what the severity and the importance of the response is and what units would be going and whether they would be running in emergency mode or non-emergency mode. And so, as you can imagine, just from that brief description, it involves a lot of training. And the greatest amount of training is on the dispatcher side. So the reason it hasn't previously been really put into place, we've talked about it for a couple of years, is on the dispatch side, it's training those telecommunicators to be able to implement it properly. And it's also a very big change to the CAD system. CAD system has to be updated every so often. One of the things that our dispatch communication center is looking at now is switching CAD systems, which they're talking about a soft rollout in August, a hard roll in October. The new CAD system is supposed to be, and this will be the first time ever, it's somewhat cutting edge, but it's actually going to be all cloud-based. So when there's an update or a change, it happens immediately and it's transparent to the end user. Whereas now, it's when they do map rolls, when they add information, when they start changing the way they dispatch and training those dispatchers, it's a very, very significant undertaking on their side. On our side, if the call comes in, they tell us who to go, and we go. So if they send the ambulance goes. Now, lieutenants, and of course, we give them the authority. If it sounds like something, sometimes you get that gut instinct or what. We can always go. We can always go, and a lot of times the lieutenant will say, that doesn't sound quite right. You may go. So more difficult thing is holding our people back. And that on our side, that would be the thing that'll be a little more difficult for our personnel to get used to. And we'll just tell them, as this gets implemented, we have to trust that dispatch is asking those questions and doing those things. And of course, we'll evaluate it very closely as it's being rolled out to make sure that everything is a positive impact to the community and to our responses as opposed to anything beyond that. So, any other questions?
We're good.
Excellent, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
That's all I have on that one.
So we can move on to the next one.
Did we hit on parks yet?
Yep.
Just go back to that for one quick second, because that's my big heartburn, and I'll say it again for the third year in a row, that the facility rentals are outrageous. $250 an hour for renting a pavilion at the aquatic center. $500 for 3 hours at the city center green. And by the way, there's no Achieve Anything discount at the aquatic center. So there needs to be some sort of evaluation as to how much these are being charged on an hourly basis. There's a reason why people aren't using our stuff. So I have an issue with the charges. The other thing is that there's apparently a procedure that's been in place that when they return deposits, you have to prove that your deposit, if it's by check, that it was cashed. Well, that's crazy because
Been in place for more than 11 years.
I've never heard of that, and I've done a lot of
The,
rentals.
the reason that's in place is because the city has been burned before of you make a deposit with a check, you come in, you rent the facility, you get your security deposit, and unfortunately in this case our finance department is too efficient. You put in a request for your refund, you get it back. If I don't have proof that it's cashed and your check bounces, you get your refund back, and then I never got the deposit in the first place.
I guess the question is, why aren't we keeping track of that in the first place? I mean, if it bounces, there should be an additional fee. And
Who am I gonna charge the additional fee if their check bounced? The problem is, the check bounces after I've already issued the refund, because these things happen that fast. And then we're out, not only the refund, we're out the check, the bank fee, the processing fee, and we're out all of the money, and the person walks away with a deposit of $100 and that the city never got.
what if the deposit is taken off of the rental fee then, versus getting it back? Oh, well, no,
If they
you
don't
still
pay
run
it.
the risk of not getting it,
The risk is the bounce check.
yeah. Which I still, I mean, I would think that the check has to clear in order for them to be able to rent the facility.
Depends when they come in to rent it. If they come in the day before to rent it and they issue us a check, and then the next day they request the refund, and it has happened, and then they get the refund the next week, the check never cleared in time, we have, by the time that gets through the whole banking system, and it comes back to us, we're out the deposit, the rental, because it's all on one check. So the entire cost has gone out, we haven't gotten anything, and there's nobody to get the money back from, because if they're bouncing the check, they probably didn't have the money in the first place.
This is something new. So if somebody rents the facility, pays to rent the facility, and they get a $100 deposit, don't you just hold that check until everything is done? Well, guess what you're getting from me? A refund request.
Holding checks is not
I
good.
didn't know that. Cool.
It's deposited at the time of the transaction.
Can they pay in another mode?
They pay credit card,
If it's-
and,
It doesn't have to be a check.
nope.
No, if it's credit, it's quickly returned.
No problem if they use another means. Well, there's an alternative to it.
Well, if that's the case, then we at least need to make people who are renting the facilities aware of that policy.
It's right on the rental
It's
form.
on the rental form about the check.
Read that. Because, to find out about the deposit, it was 3 months later that nobody reached out and said, hey, there's a deposit that you paid, we need, until we started asking about it, so. All right, well, I guess that's really nor here nor there then. But the whole amount of money to rent facilities seems excessive. I think the Morgan Center, the one room was, and half a room, I think it was something like $300 for 2 or 3 hours. It was outrageous.
Where you at? I'm sorry.
I gotta find it. Here we go. Morgan Center. I don't have a number on 7 of 9, and it's under G. It would have been. Is it the multi-purpose room? Is the big room?
Yes.
So half of that room with kitchen is $60 an hour.
That's the regular fee, not including the discount that was approved by commission, I believe it was last year.
For any time members, though, not for.
I believe it went to registered nonprofits and Achieve Anything members,
Okay.
Normally open to Northport citizens, or is that open to everybody?
everybody.
So that reduces it by what was it?
50%.
50%?
I believe so. It's 50%.
Okay, so that means it's $30 an hour. So for 4 hours, it's $120.
If you'd like us to bring back some information, every year we do benchmarking on our fees, not just our program fees, but also all the facility fees. We also did it with the Aquatic Center to make sure that we are competitive in the market, and we are not on the high end. We are pretty much either in the middle or on the low end with the discount that has been applied.
I just think it's not, the people who would use parks, pavilions and stuff, I think that it's just
But Commissioner,
prohibitive, cost prohibitive.
if you want to use a pavilion, there's nothing stopping me from going to use a pavilion. By me renting the pavilion, it is securing and ensuring and guaranteeing that I have sole use of that pavilion. But I can go anytime to use the pavilion and just take my chances that there's either going to be other people there or not other people there.
Well, not at the Aquatic Center.
Sure.
Well, the Aquatic Center, the large pavilion there, we have called out as being able to be reserved, if you do that in advance. If not, then it's just open.
Take your chances. You know, if you want to make sure you've got the table and chairs under the pavilion, you've got to pay for that.
I'm not arguing paying for it. I'm arguing the price of it. I'm arguing the fact that it's gonna cost me $500 to rent City Center Green.
It's also going to
For
keep
3
600.
hours.
It's also going to keep 600 people from being able to utilize it.
Yeah.
So you're paying for that.
But aren't you kind of
For
cutting your
taking it
nose
away.
off to spite your face if you're going to create it so
I
that
think
it's
you'll have very few
excessive?
people purchasing it,
That's what I'm trying to get at.
but that's okay too. Most of the people will use it. Those that have the ability to purchase it will. Those that don't won't. But whenever you do, yeah, you take it away from everyone else.
But I get that, but I'm saying is that if either you want them used or you don't. And if you don't want them used, then you make it too excessive for people who can afford it. If you don't want them used, then leave it. I mean, that's
People are going to still use the pavilion.
they're just not gonna rent them.
Exactly.
Well, wouldn't it be smarter to make it more reasonable so more people actually rent them versus just show up?
That means that the other people aren't gonna be able to use it. For a cheap price, you just kept 500 people from using it
able to use it.
because somebody paid a cheap price.
Yeah. I mean, you can go out onto
kinda makes
City Center Green with a group of 20 people, and you're not usually gonna run into anybody.
So the fees that I think you're looking at on the City Center Front Green are for the multi-day event, not the hourly. The multi-day event was put in place for those events that need to load in the day before. It's a larger event, like the barbecue event. Sometimes they're there into, overnight setting up, and then are back there early in the morning.
Where's the hourly fee
From you guys'
for
crews to that.
City Center Green?
On yours is on top of page 8 of 9, isn't it? Or
7, 8. Okay, yeah, I was looking at the multi-day event. You got it. Okay.
The other thing, Commissioner, if I can add, like the pavilion for a birthday party. Let's say, my little one wants to have a birthday party at the pool and he wants to invite 4 of his friends. I'm not gonna go through the trouble of renting the pavilion for 5 or 6 people for a little birthday party and secure that pavilion and go through the deposit thing, go through the application thing. I'm gonna take my chance.
See, at $15 an hour, I'd rent it. Because you
Then you
can
can.
rent the pavilions in all other parks for $15 an hour.
But then that's guaranteeing
That's
that nobody.
affordable.
Well,
Saying,
the pool isn't as affordable as the park.
apparently.
Well,
Nor should I think it should be, because
That
the
was
costs
the
of the
point I'm
pool are
getting at.
exponentially higher than a regular park.
That was part of the discussion we had when we brought the fees forward.
Yeah, but what overhead is there in a pavilion at 200?
Well, I think you're talking about the whole park.
No, this was just the pavilion.
No, I know, but I think when you're talking about the entire park, the cost of the entire aquatic center.
No, I get that. No, I understand that. But you're talking about renting aquatic center facility rental outside of standard operation. That's where I screwed up. Okay, forget it. Forget everything I just said, because then that makes a big difference. I didn't read that part.
Okay.
I'm not awake yet, obviously.
I've done that a couple
I can
times
understand-
myself too,
I can
seen
understand
something
your
and
reasoning.
clicked somewhere
Now,
else.
You got it now, but I understand your reasoning.
If it's rented, that's income coming in. If it's not rented,
Yeah.
it does offset the costs. But again, it's after normal business hours, so
I'm okay now. I was having a stroke.
No,
you're okay. But I understand where you were coming from, that's all I'm saying.
That makes sense. Okay.
Did commission want us to bring back any of the benchmarking information, or are you good?
No.
Thank you.
Are you awake now? We can go
No,
forward?
No,
No?
I still
No?
have half of this.
Okay.
Yeah, no.
Just let us know.
8 o'clock in Venice, remember?
I know.
So are we done with the citywide fee budget city fees?
One, the utilities, and I know that.
So we're on
Right
to
away,
utilities.
I'll just make that announcement right now.
I didn't see it.
I don't. I'm trying to find it on the city.
Not directing anybody, just saying out loud, we're on to utilities.
Here comes Rick.
I'm just making the statement.
Here comes Peter.
I'm trying
Up
to
and down
find
the-
the fees for utilities, and I don't see them.
There weren't any changes.
Right, but I thought that we got a copy of the full.
Fee schedule ordinance.
Son of a gun. Well, I'm not real, but what are the changes to utility fees now? Probably.
None right at the moment. We are in the process of doing a rate analysis right now. So,
That's not part of this.
no ma'am, no.
No, but it may change this after the rate analysis comes in.
There's a possibility.
Okay, so, I wish I had it up, but as I understand it, there's a, there's a fee for hookup, or let's just say someone's late. And I think it's on the 16th day, there's a late fee, not a problem. And then there's an administrative fee, not a problem. But then on top of that, there's a reconnect fee of like $45. So you essentially, by someone being late, add over or near $100 on top of that bill that they're already having problems paying.
It's if they get shut off, though. You have to get shut off.
I don't.
We
I don't think
do
so.
not charge you to shut you off. Okay, you get a late fee for that. But when we turn you back on, and we physically go back out to turn it back on, then that fee is assessed. And Anna, maybe could explain it a little better, why we still got Anna with us.
Not for long.
For the time being. When a person goes late, there is, once they get to the point where they're eligible for disconnection, there's a $20 charge that goes onto the account, because at that point, staff has had to do the time to work up the shut-off list and all of that good stuff. The next part of that fee hits when we actually have to send staff out to do that disconnection or that shut-off, because that means our staff has to go out, shut that account off, and then go back out again once they've paid their bill.
And how much is that? Oh, thank you. And the disconnect fee is how much?
Off the top of my head, it's either 25 or 30, I think it's $30.
35.
35.
Delinquency service fee, normal hours is 35. And that's for them. Charge includes both turn off and turn on service.
Correct.
And they have to physically go and do that. It's
Correct.
not like your electric where you can flip a switch and then flip another switch to turn you back on.
Absolutely correct. It used to be a flat 45. Once you hit the shut-off list and you were eligible for disconnection, it was a flat 45 across the board, whether or not we went out there to do the actual shut-off. But then we changed that to make it a little bit more equitable. But a $5 late fee, once you went late, wasn't doing anything to motivate.
Fee, though, just the 20 and the 35 disconnect/reconnect. I thought there was a third fee that was a surprise to me.
Oh,
No?
No.
So it's just an additional $35 if you're late and it gets disconnected.
correct. It's the $20
I
delinquency
mean,
fee.
$55, sorry.
Right. The 20 and then the 35.
There's not a third fee.
I'm looking at the fee
That's
structure
what I
right
just
now.
looked at. I didn't see it.
I don't see it.
But I've had 2 people tell me on their bill they've received a third fee.
Wouldn't that be
Maybe
the reconnect?
administration fee?
Because reconnect and disconnect are the same charge.
Yeah, that's the
Okay.
$35.
Right.
And then the $20 is the late fee.
Was there an admin
Where's
fee?
the admin fee? That's what it was.
There is no admin fee that I'm aware of associated with delinquencies.
Okay. So
I
that might be an
know
issue.
at one point with the backflow program, there was a $5 administration charge for us administering the financing and the proration of the testing fees and the install fees. There was an administration charge that was factored
So if
into
someone
those.
has a late bill that charges the $20 late fee, and that's, I assume it's a one-time $20 late fee, right?
For that
bill cycle,
that bill cycle,
right?
correct.
And then say that they get it disconnected and have to have it reconnected, that's another $35. But if they have a third charge of, say, $25 administration fee, because I've heard this from two people,
No.
that's why I'm asking.
No, ma'am. No, ma'am.
And that is inappropriate billing and they need to come to you.
What
If
about if it goes,
the case, because that's not one of our,
That's not
that's
one of
not
our
one of our
fees.
charges.
I want that on the record.
Certainly.
Because
Then
the
there's
two people that
something-
called me about it, they need to.
And we look at those, Commissioner, on case-by-case basis.
Oh, I know.
If there is an error, and we will correct it to make it right.
Okay, that's
what
why,
if they go more than a month late? Is that $20 tacked on because they're 2 months late now?
No,
And it's
they're only
40.
assessed at the one time.
Okay. Oh, I thought
There-
maybe
for that-
that's where a third came
If they
in
then
too.
pay their bill and then are late again the next time, then they're gonna be charged
oh,
again.
yeah,
Correct.
absolutely.
It's, those fees get assessed one time per occurrence. So if they're habitually rolling late, there could be some overlap in there. They could see, it could appear like something's been duplicated when it hasn't.
And of course, we also have a payment plan that they can enter if they're having very serious difficulty. And I always bring them to the city manager's attention, and we can work, we work with them.
Okay, it was that third administration fee that I was
That you
not
were
aware of, and so,
That-
and I don't see it.
I'm thinking that, and we don't charge anything that's outside of what is on the fee structure that the commission has approved. So if there's something else on there, a lot of times the way that our bills appear, sometimes people confuse their prior balance that gets carried forward.
Oh, they said it was
Yeah.
an administration fee. It
I'd have to
stated-
see the bill.
And that's what I'm saying, is I know you guys don't do the billing, so that's why I wanted to make sure that, yeah,
Yeah, we can definitely take a look at that. It
I
just,
will make sure.
yes,
that they
please do.
Get that information. Thank you.
While we're on that one, because I just happened to notice something here. It says customer request meter reread fee. The $35 if meter is accurately within accepted standards. My question is, let's say some old lady, somebody taps into her water, or say her water hose just is leaking. She makes a phone call, says, hey, listen, there's no way my bill is this high. It's never been this high. You guys go out, you find out, well, it is that high. So here's a $35 fee, but they don't know how to, they don't understand. Would it be a little more reasonable to say, the first one for the year is, we're not going to charge you for that. But if we have to keep coming out, we're going to charge you every additional time.
Here's the way that our verifications work. If we get a bill, or our meter readers go out each month, they read every single meter in the city. If there is an anomaly, an unusual spike in the usage, that's flagged on our reports. In our Tanya Byington in our cashiering billing office will basically preemptively order a verify read work order. We'll go back out to make sure that there wasn't an error in the read. If it was a situation where the digital read or the AMR system isn't in place and somebody had to physically go and manually read the meter, we go back and we double check that reader to verify and make sure that the reading was accurate. So if the customer calls in again at that point and we say, okay, we have verified, and usually when we go out to verify and it's the reading is correct, we'll leave them a door hanger or some notification to say, hey, we noticed this, something is going on. It gives the customer an alert to go ahead and take a look inside and maybe do some investigation on their own. If they then ask us to go back out, that's when you're looking at the charge.
Most people use about the same water every month, and if their bill does spike up, and this has happened many, many times, we say, well, your bill spiked up during the 15th and the 16th, and the 15th and the 18th, they go, you know what? We had company down that weekend. And,
We did pressure washing.
Here, so
Or
I don't
we
know
weren't-
how that happened.
And then
That's
we
what
investigate
happens.
further.
yeah, so, yeah, we do that quite often.
And it's reasonable.
Mayor?
Yeah, yes, ma'am.
I noticed when I was helping with the baby shower, and I wasn't aware of this because I'm not on city water, that you have an H2O program so that if somebody is having difficulty paying, and there's like a box that I check and pay like $5 more on my bill, and that $5 goes to help somebody who's struggling, is.
Yes, there is a spot on the bill for that right now. That is actually a social services program that they administer. There has not been a lot of use of that program in recent years.
It was put in during the recession.
But if somebody is continuously rolling over and late, and rolling over and late, and rolling over and late, of course, they're getting charged $55 each month. That's $110 in 2 months. And then it just keeps going in a snowball effect. Do you advise them of this program to say, hey, apply for this, because then you might be caught up, and that way then you're not going to be charged this $55 every month?
Usually they come to us when we don't preemptively reach out to everybody who rolls late, because there are so many of them, in the.
How much is in that fund, then I have to wonder?
There's not much in that particular fund, because what social services does, there are a lot of resources that they have at their disposal that they can refer clients to. And fortunately, those other resources have been able to cover most of, handle the clients that we've had to send their way. Unfortunately, the H2O program has not seen a lot in donations in the last couple of years. We really have not had that many people participate and feed the fund, so it's quite small. But at this point, whenever we do get somebody who's on the verge of shut off, hey, I need help, we work very closely with social services, and we send them over to Janet and her crew, and they're very good with serving those clients.
So possibly what I'm hearing is maybe the H2O program needs to go away?
I think that's something that Janet, the social services might be looking at as far as, the cost of administration and the actual amount of flow that's going through it, and whether or not.
If there's other resources to help.
And that are able to take up that slack.
But you guys take those proactive steps to do all that, right? That's
Yes.
what you just said. That's awesome. Appreciate it.
Well, it wouldn't be feasible for us to reach out to everybody who's rolling late every month, but if we get somebody who calls in and is concerned that they're going late and they're gonna get hit with those fees, or they're on the verge of shut off, we always will share that information, send them over to social services, and get them in touch with the right resources.
Maybe city manager, you get us a little bit of information about how much money is in that fund, how many people have used it, how much gets contributed, these past, let's say, 3 or 5 years. And that way then we can really make a decision as to, how to disperse that money, or.
Was it put in place through a commission?
Well, it would have.
Certainly discussed the commission, and it's been around, I think I was here when it was started. I believe it was somewhere around the 2008-09. It was during the recession.
It was commission driven and a decision,
Like I say, I believe so. I don't remember off the top of my head if it was run through commission or just a great idea somebody came up with.
Well, it was utilities' idea, and they're the ones who presented it to commission, who then gave it the go-ahead, and then it was the city manager's deal to determine where that was gonna fall under, and that's when it went to social services, but it was utilities' idea, it wasn't ours.
I'd be curious to know if people are still contributing to it, who's taken advantage of it, that kind of little bit of detailed information, because if it's spending time every month to report or administer it?
I know that in the last 2 years, there has not been a whole lot of activity with the account. We actually looked at those balances the other day.
We've had a tremendous donation this year of $1.
Oh, my lord.
I was just about to
I was
look it
gonna
up.
say, I know
Somebody beat me to it.
we pulled the numbers
Look
for
out.
social services and it was like,
So it sounds like we need to have a bigger conversation. Yeah. It sounds like something we need to have a bigger conversation for, with a lot more information before we nix the program.
Oh, I wouldn't nix it. I think we need to just market it better. Because I
Or-
think people will be willing to put $5 on. I mean, it's just a matter of letting people
Yeah.
know.
We just need a little bit more information as to
Right.
either nix it or promote it or whatever we're gonna do with it.
And move it out of just people who use utilities or beyond that.
But that's what it's
'Cause
for,
that's
is for
the problem,
utilities.
is that you only have so much percentage that are actually on water and sewer. It's on their bill, but there's people out there who are on septic and well who would be more than happy to give the $5.
I thought you were talking about the receiving end of
No,
it.
well, I know that this year that I have worked with Janet and Social Services to get it on social media a little bit more, but it's definitely a conversation that I can have with her to step up the marketing on that program.
It was $24 last year. So it's not, there's not been a tremendous amount coming in the last couple years at least.
And I know we pushed it hard when Irma rolled through and we tied it into a neighbors program.
That's why it was $24.
Not on utilities, I'm good.
All right, what do you got next?
Building.
Building.
Thank you, guys.
You're welcome.
So my only real question for building, other than the, nickel and diming of permits, is the business tax fee, which they're not calling it business tax, I don't know what you're calling it. It just says, it's on page, yeah, it does say business tax, formerly occupational tax, that's what it is.
Page what?
Page 13. Okay, didn't we ask to look at this in a larger scheme of things, like the types of businesses, the charges, and how that compares, like, if I remember correctly, and this was a couple years ago, right?
We had a whole conversation actually removing it last year, and then we brought you a bunch of information and we said, keep it.
City attorney, I think
We
is
were gonna
supposed to
make
do
it a
something.
flat $25 for every
That's what I
business.
thought.
Yeah. And the city
Okay.
attorney's office, I think, is reviewing the legalities of some part of it.
Well, and I think that we talked about, well, I know I was concerned about the fact that they had different rates for different types of businesses, but no justification for those rates, because this was all based off of numbers and
Yeah.
from back in the
Yeah,
day.
I think we're still waiting for information from city attorney's office on this, because it did go to a reading, and then we kind of stopped it, and then asked
For
for
lack of
additional.
time,
Yeah, and then we asked for additional information.
Well, essentially, all that you asked our office for, and it's true, I haven't returned it in writing, is whether or not you can establish a flat $25 registration fee, which certainly you could, but that would not be, a business tax. And you have to go through there's an entire statutory process and procedure you have to go through to adopt the tax. You have to review a study and go through all these other things before establishing what the tax is. It can't really just be arbitrary. It has to be based on this study. So if you want to do a flat registration fee, you could do that. That would not be a business tax. You'd be essentially abolishing your business tax, and then you would not be able to reinstitute a business tax without doing a whole new study afresh. As long as you keep the business tax, your study will continue to stay relevant and allow you to modify the business tax.
But I don't think these original fees were done by a study in the first place. Because they were established way while long ago.
If memory serves me right, it seems like that maybe the statute says that if you didn't have a study before this point, then you could do it or something like that. What I'm positive of is if you kill it now, you will have to have a study to reinstitute it.
Well, because as we know, legislation is trying to get rid of the fact that anybody does a business tax in the first place. So, you know, registration fee may be the way that we have to go.
I actually
But-
like that better than just having it the flat 25. But the curious question I have is how does the county get away with everybody paying $14.95 for theirs?
Because some of the money probably goes to the EDC program.
But it's a business tax. So if you.
It's probably
but
grandfathered
it's-
in.
But it's a flat.
Yeah.
And with what she just said, you can't have a flat and
Yeah,
it
you
be a
can.
tax. She just stated no.
We can do a fee. And
A registration fee, but a tax, you have to have it taxed, as she just explained.
Well, I think
It
they
can't
call
be a
it
flat.
licensing fee or something like that. They don't call it a tax.
See,
Well, I mean, you guys are the ones that asked, here's what you asked. A unanimous consensus that the city attorney research the establishment of a flat $25 registration fee. I mean, if that's what you want to do, if you want every business to register in the city and pay $25, that's just something that we write into the ordinances, or into the code via ordinance. It's not, that's not complicated. There's nothing that prohibits you from doing that. It's not the same thing as a business tax. And we don't currently have a business registration in the city. So that's not something that exists. That's something that you would have to adopt. And I mean, that's just different than a business tax. You can have a business tax and a registration fee. There's nothing that keeps you from doing that either. They're just kind of two different roads and two different revenue streams as well.
I don't mind either or. I just don't like the idea of us charging a business tax that really doesn't have any justification for it. Because that's, or fairness to it.
I don't think it's called a business tax here in the city of Northport. It's
Yes,
called.
it is.
It's a tax receipt.
You often hear the phrase business tax receipt, but it's a business tax, and the receipt is the proof that you've paid the tax. So,
I used to pay $150 for the storage.
And that's what I'm trying to get at. You're paying $150 for what? Government is supposed to charge for what it puts out.
The
What
majority
did
were
government put out that cost $150 a year?
size
For
of the
your-
building, because it was over 100.
But that's what your taxes that you pay on
Right,
real estate.
but what was it that was the actual cost to the government that cost $150 for that storage? There is none.
No.
So this is why I'm trying to get at the fact that it's gotta be justified.
And here's another example. My husband has a business tax that he pays, I think it's $50. Trust me, there's no return on that $50 that I shell out to the city for that every year.
So, and remember that you're not just getting the city tax license, you're getting the county tax license and possibly
State.
Charlotte,
And then you still
because
have
you
to do
can't
the
do
state.
business,
And
right?
sometimes
then-
there's state.
There you go. So
No,
you
there
add
is
it all
state.
up.
Yeah.
Well, not on everything.
Well, I like the
Sure there is.
registration fee because it gives you a list of the businesses in the city also.
Yeah, I get that, but we're not
So
keeping
we're-
that now, so. right?
You guys are keeping track of it.
Well, we don't publicize a list of what are all of the,
But you have a list.
we have a,
No, we had asked for a directory to be posted so that you're not.
We did, yeah,
Yes, we
online.
did. We asked online to say, who's all the plumbers in Northport, businesses, who's all the.
that's something that through the
That's
traffic
still
system
hasn't
as well.
been implemented yet, because I keep checking and I have to either
It's part
know.
of the new software system that's coming.
And that registration would just flow right into that software. Yeah, I love the idea.
So do we have an answer to was there a study done on the current fees that are here being proposed today?
For the business tax? Yeah, may I?
Good morning, Katrina Romano, Neighborhood Development Services, for the record. There was an equity study done many years ago. There has not been a new study done as far as the current business tax fees, if that's your question.
Yes. And the equity study was done, what, 1970s?
Maybe 80s.
80s?
Yes, ma'am. And those fees have been in effect since then, the same fees.
Well, they've increased dramatically since then.
I've been here 14 years. They have not increased since I have been here, not once.
There are limits under the statute with respect to how much you can increase them, and it looks like the statute does allow you to charge a minimum business tax of $25. So you could do that in lieu of a registration. But if you reduce your business tax to $25, then if you want to increase it, you're going to be capped on how much you can increase it.
It's a certain percentage.
Incrementally.
Yeah.
Right,
What is the
because
cap?
It's a certain percentage in the statute, I think.
The
Amber has it like that.
reclassification may not increase by more than the following. If the charge is $150 or less, you can increase it up to 200%, so you can double it. If it's between $150 and $500, you can increase it by 100%. If it's between $500 and $2,500, you can increase it 75%. $2,500 to $10,000, 50%. For more than $10,000, 10%. And in no case may you increase it more than $5,000. So as the tax gets higher, the amount that you can increase it is reduced.
If I could just add one thing to the commission for consideration, since I've administered, this program through our department for several years. My only concern, if you go with just a straight registration process, let's see, it's $25 across the board, is then you're going to have big box stores like Walmart and Publix and Lowe's paying the same as, maybe the lady who's doing seamstress work, from her home. So I just, that's kind of the other side of it, if you will.
And that's what my original heartburn was, is that there is no.
Currently, see, I
structure
don't have a
delineation.
problem with
Right.
that.
Right.
I don't have a problem with that. They chose which business they brought into our city. And that $25 allows them that register that we were talking about,
software thing.
that, you can find out what or who does those business in our city. And pretty much it was kind of buying $25 to be put on the list for advertising.
I mean, that's going to happen regardless. Once we go to the new software program, it doesn't matter whether you have the business tax or the registration. It's going to be out there, every business. However, we have their information. It's going to be populated in the database, and it's going to be available online.
Except for those who don't come in.
Correct.
I mean, if you
Correct.
don't come in, you don't make yourself known, you're not gonna be put out.
Business tax,
Right.
then you're not gonna be on the register unless you're doing exactly what Commissioner Luke stated. If you will have to voluntarily come in and register. Under the program we talked about, it would be a voluntary thing. You come in and register, you pay your $25, you're on the list. If you don't come in and pay it, you're not on the list.
Well, we may be
Whereas
forced to
right
do that.
now,
Exactly,
if you
because
do
the
it-
state's trying to take away the tax anyhow.
Yes.
So this would be putting as a.
Unless we
ahead
get it
of
grandfathered in, maybe then we just keep the tax.
They're not even
that's gonna happen.
grandfathering anymore at the state level.
What about the fact that there's no, what was that?
It's still in the statutes currently.
Right.
They've been lobbying that for many years.
taxis or, Ubers or stuff, there's no taxes for that.
We used to charge a business tax for the taxi service, and then they would go get a vehicle registration through the police department. And PD, for whatever reason, no longer does that vehicle registration, so we really don't have an avenue for that. There's no Uber into the ordinance for sure. I mean, that's certainly something you could add in.
Well, a couple of years ago, the legislature adopted some regulations.
And we had to undo what we had. So
I don't remember how it applied to business tax.
I didn't
But
either.
I know that we are limited on how we can regulate rideshare. So that might be why it's not in there.
Exactly. So I guess, I think that if we are gonna continue with the business tax model, we really need to look at the equity between the types of businesses. So for instance, you have a realtor that pays more money than a rental agency, where most realtors are rental agencies. So, you know what I mean? And then you'll have like a bank that pays this much, and then a mortgage broker pays this much. So there's no real rhyme or reason to the distribution of the way that these charges were.
I think the broker is $100 and the real estate agent should be a $50, if just going off memory. I don't know how it's structured in there. Yeah, thank you.
Mortgage broker was, if I remember correctly, here we go. Broker or agent mortgager is 50, but then when you go to banks.
It's a banking institution, it's 175, I believe.
So a broker, agent, or mortgage and loan is mortgages and loans could be a bank. You know what I mean? Like, I guess I'm just trying to get the justification as to why are you charging $175? What is the service you're providing them for $175?
Under the Florida statutes where, and I've given up control of my electronic device. But where it, the definition in the chapter says something essentially like for the privilege of doing business within your jurisdiction.
Ooh, you're in the city of Northport.
So that's at least the policy that the legislature envisioned in adopting these regulations.
I just think that it needs to be fair. I don't see fairness, especially when we're looking at 1980s results. And I mean, I don't know if I necessarily support a flat fee, because I get what you're saying. Walmart should pay more than
Why?
the mom and pop store.
Why?
Because there may be, and this is where the justification comes in. If you have to have someone come inspect it, and it's more square feet, and it's part of the inspection fee.
Well, that's permanent.
That's different.
That's totally different than.
No, and
Your business tax means you have the right to come into our boundaries and do business, period. Has
you don't
nothing.
get an annual fire inspection.
No, you get nothing. It is just the blessing to be in our city.
Tax. Now,
It's not
correct me
charged
if I'm wrong, Amber. The way I understand it, and I've been to a few of the conferences, the annual conferences with municipalities from all over the state. Many municipalities use the business tax as a absolute revenue for their city, okay? A revenue
Cities
stream.
up in the panhandle
Yeah.
that do not charge an ad valorem tax, because this
Right.
is the only tax they charge.
And
They're the
I
ones that are
would,
they're gonna get hammered if this law changes.
right, it's gonna hurt them. But I would say that the reason a bigger box store is charged is they're generating more revenue in your city, okay? So therefore, they're paying a higher tax, if you will, opposed to a
because
small.
of the privilege to do business and.
Yeah.
But it's pay to play and you're making more
But
money.
I'm a little
Right,
more with
right.
Ms. Luke. Why would you penalize somebody just for making money?
Exactly.
You know?
I understand,
There's
just,
an
right.
argument coming from the
Okay,
side.
well,
Mention,
That's
think
a
about this.
conversation for another day.
No, let's think about this a second, because Walmart
To go.
Walmart has the privilege of doing business in the city of Northport, but Walmart also generates a huge amount of sales tax revenue to our city compared to my
So we're gonna
husband's.
charge them more?
So that,
I get it. No, and I think everybody has valid arguments. I think it's
just a flat rate is
discussion
the way
that
to
we
go.
need to have at another time, because
Do we have
Then we've
another
gotta
time to
go with
discuss
what
this
the-
further? I mean, when does this need to be put into place?
Yeah, this is a
It-
workshop here.
Before the budget.
Because, I mean, we're on it, we're talking about it right now, we got an hour and a half.
If
We
you
have
would
another
like us,
agenda item.
yeah, we don't
Yeah.
have an hour and a half.
Well,
no,
it was brought up as being discussed, and this is what we tried to do for 2 years now.
yeah.
Yeah,
And
that's
so
my
we
problem, yeah.
got to the point
So
of
let's-
where we were gonna get rid of it, said couldn't get rid of
Yeah,
it. We
it was supposed to
discussed
come-
the registration, making it the flat fee, because all you're doing is,
Kicking it down the road.
no, you're just giving somebody the privilege to come into your city. That
Make
is
a
it. So
decision.
why should somebody pay more for their privilege than somebody else to pay for their? What's
That's
that?
what it is, it's a cover charge.
That I understand.
Yeah.
I was trying to reach, I saw you look glossed over right now.
So, to me, I go back to where we were when this was brought up before, and we go with the registration and that flat fee of $25 for whoever wants to
And
have the privilege of being in our
Or
city.
50, I don't know.
that money goes to economic development, correct?
Well,
So,
the business tax goes to
Yeah.
economic development, because it's actually written into our code that way. If you want to do a registration.
We'd have to rewrite the code anyway.
Oh, yeah.
So that'd have to
They're
be.
two different things, the business tax and registration
Yeah.
are two different things. You can have both, you can have neither. You can,
Oh, we're
you
talking
know,
about getting rid of cost.
you can, if you want to do a flat fee, you can do a registration, or you can do a minimum $25 business tax and still keep the tax.
But if we do it as a registration, no matter what the state does, we are not getting preempted there.
Absolutely.
Unless the state turns around and says no registration.
Well,
Right,
it
well, that would
it
be
depends on,
something.
it depends on, Mayor, it depends on how they write it, because,
That's true.
you know, I mean,
Yeah.
you know, on the one hand, you could say, well, this whole registration scheme is just a business tax and registration's clothing. I mean, so it really depends on the language.
Could you charge $50 for all businesses, but home-based businesses would be 25?
They're still got the same privilege as somebody with a storefront, and that storefront's paying you tax.
that
So
storefront
why are you
generates
gonna
sales
give
tax
somebody
usually.
who's
I'm
already
just
got?
talking it out. No, that's a good point.
I mean,
That's
to me,
why I'm
what's
bringing
good
it
for the
out
goose is
there.
good for the
Honestly,
gander.
I mean, if you're paying $50 a year and you can't afford $50 a year, you might need to get into another business.
Yeah, see, I agree, $50 is
Or, I mean,
realistic,
whatever it
not
is, you know,
25.
I mean, even if it's 100, I mean, if you can't do that every year, then
Oh,
you don't have a, well, I'm just saying you don't have a business.
I'd go with 50.
Well, I'm just saying in, you know, the principle
Yeah.
of things.
I
Because
guess
you're not
we-
talking about thousands and thousands of dollars.
To move this along, can we ask them to please bring back for the next meeting that we have on fees, information about the pros and cons for registration, flat fee, and pros and cons for business tax? And maybe look at it from a $50 and a $25.
I want to see the implications
25 is too
financially.
low.
How much money are you going to be losing?
Right.
That goes to the economic development.
Exactly.
Budget right now. This year for the business tax is $125,000 for the city.
Right, right, but how much would be, like, what is the actual net difference is what I want to know. If it's at $50 a
A registration.
registration, if we swap, then what is it that we're losing? 50,000? If it's 50,000,
It may not.
where are we gonna get that 50,000? That I need to know.
Okay.
And I also need to know what's happening with because I know the fire department does an annual inspection. Is that an additional charge? Or is that just,
It's an additional charge. I ran a business and I know you have a storefront, you're gonna pay for whatever they come do for you. You get nothing free for having a business.
An annual
If they
inspection,
charge you
but
a
I don't
fee,
know
it's
the
nothing
fee.
related to this.
Yeah.
The business tax is
Just ask him.
no, I know, but I don't ever remember paying a fee for inspection.
I don't know how fire inspections work. I just know it's not related to business
That would have
tax.
nothing to do with this, I can tell you that.
No, but maybe it needs to. You see where I'm going with this? Maybe it needs to. Because then you're getting something for the money, you know what I mean?
Rather than just annoying you that
Yes,
you
that
can
you're allowed
come
to be
into
there.
the city.
Your local business tax is generating $125,000 a year. Yeah, I have $162 million budget. So, anyway,
$25,000.
$125,000.
And just scrolling through your code, looking at the different business taxes, a lot of them are set at a flat fee of 50. And then there are some that are calculated differently, and they're a flat fee of 100, 150.
But right here in the middle, you have dressmaking is $10. That's just kind of odd.
And you got the people selling fruit free, vegetables are free.
So certainly there would be some changes, but there are a lot that are set already at a
And
flat
is
fee of
this,
50.
this isn't what was proposed to us a couple of years ago?
Yeah.
Same thing.
It's the same
Yeah,
exact
nothing,
number?
nothing's changed, nothing at all. Yes, yes, ma'am.
Because I thought there was more of a difference, but
Chief?
anyways, fire inspection, go.
Hi, if I
Hi.
may. Scott
Yeah,
Titus from the Fire
please.
Rescue District, Chief.
Get fired.
As a clarification, most of the fees that you see that have anything to do with fire inspections are when a new business is being proposed, is being built. There's plans review for that. There's a number of different things that go through the building department, and then there are certain things for occupancy that go through for us for sprinkler systems, fire alarms, et cetera. The annual inspection, when we go out and check the building, we do not charge for that. Okay, that is a part of what we do to keep the citizens of the community safe. If there are changes, if we find that there are issues out there, we address those, then they have a certain period of time. If you remember recently, we came to you all with some changed language to the very slight changes to the ULDC that you all helped us work on so that we could make sure that went to the state fire marshal to be adopted because we didn't have the ability to actually leverage compliance. We're in that process. We're very close, I think, right now to actually being able to do that for the first time. Thankfully, we've been able to get compliance through all of that stuff just by being great community partners. We have a couple of holdouts in the community right now that are things that we probably will go through that process with in the near future as soon as that's completed. But for the annual inspections, there's no charge for that. So all those things you see, if there's an occupancy change or something like that, to an existing business, yes, that would prompt something. There would be charges, but not for a normal annual fire inspection.
And I'll explain too, there's a third party that I would have to hire to come in.
And do
if-
fire extinguishers.
Fire extinguishers and, yeah.
I would spend probably close to $2,000 for fire inspections.
Mhm.
Those
Should be in a
guys,
restaurant.
our inspectors would come in and just look
Make sure
over
everything's
what the third party did. So there was a lot of money
Absolutely.
went out on that.
Yeah.
And
There's
those
a
things
certain-
involve things like, so if you're a restaurant and you have a commercial hood system, there's
Ansel
requirements
system.
for that.
That's right,
If
getting that
your
inspected.
sprinkler system has to be maintained, your fire alarm has to be maintained, just like for our backflow preventers and our businesses on the utility side, those have to be maintained, so. Yes,
Well,
those,
when
just
we
those,
used to
those
get
fees aren't
the-
leveraged through us, but they are a requirement of us, and if it's not done, then we go back and recycle and say,
I was just gonna say, when we would get inspections, they would go further in if your lights were out on your exit signs and if there was anything in the walkway of entering or exiting the building, if there was, I mean, it was way more than just checking a fire extinguisher and being off.
We still do all those things, the inspectors absolutely do all those things, as they see things, they cite them. Some things that can be addressed and fixed right now.
They do.
Okay, a lot of times they will cite them and go, hey, you can't do that, they might come back and do, when they come back and do, if there was something else they didn't have to cite before. Well, I'll use the example of, rack storage, okay, you can't have something within 18 inches of a sprinkler. So if somebody put something on the top shelf that was a bigger item than normal and it's within 12 inches, they say that needs to be taken down. They're probably not gonna cite them on that. They might write on there as a recommendation, say, hey, in the future as a reminder, but we don't necessarily cite them. So we try and work with them.
So my point in asking that question was that maybe that registration fee needs to be tied in the amount of money that's being pulled out of the district, because
I would rather see it be a flat for everybody to have the privilege to come in and those guys charge for coming out looking at my monster building, if there was something like that. But to give everybody the privilege of coming in to meet everybody, privilege is privilege. Now, the energy that they use in my business, then yeah, I would owe them. But just to give me the privilege, you don't have any more privilege than I do, and I don't have any more than you.
Here's my take on charging for an inspection. You're already paying your non-ad valorem
Right.
rates to the fire district. And whether you use them or not, you're already paying that as a property owner. And as a business owner, you as a business owner may not be paying it, but your landlord is, which is then charging you based on the taxes. I think the fire district taxes that are paid on your real estate taxes should be enough to be covering those annual inspections on businesses.
To protect the public.
Exactly.
I see what you're saying. I have to tell a funny, with all those inspections that went on, the funniest one was Josh Durham got me for having my door propped open. It was a fire door and I had it open for people to go through. Yeah, that was written down.
Ours was constantly the stupid batteries because there was no AC that would work in the slice, and the batteries would just last maybe a month. And the exit signs never failed, they would never work when they came.
Let's move on. We got a
Worked
little
all the
over an
time.
hour and we got a whole nother.
I'm done.
All right, so let's move
Thank
on
you.
to the next agenda.
Mayor, I'm gonna run to the ladies' room.
Oh, that's a good idea.
Moving on to advisory board and committee annual reports. Andrew?
So on that one, they're bringing back something for us to look over at the next workshop for fees.
Don't have a next workshop for fees scheduled, but we will create one now to go over
Well,
this.
I don't know if it should be a workshop,
Yeah,
or
I
just bring
mean-
it in a meeting so we can do a vote and be done with it.
Well, we gotta look at budgets, so we might as well just do it in a budget workshop instead of hanging up on meeting minutes. Okay.
Moving on. Advisory board.
Advisory boards and committees. At our budget assumptions, projections, and priorities meeting we had last month, this was requested to bring back. So we have assembled all of the annual reports from each of your advisory boards. And we're opening it for you all, so you get to have a chance to talk as a group of what the recommendations, how you would like to use those advisory boards, if there's anything you want to include in the budget.
Hey, we'll just wait till you guys are done partying back there, it's all good.
We didn't get to discuss the one item last night because the length of the meeting, it got pushed off, and that was the beautification committee. So, I mean, we'd be discussing monies with that, so we probably need to just wait until they give their presentation whenever they can, instead of discussing it now without them even being around.
Yeah, was it just that we would get an accumulation of these reports? I thought they were going to give us the reports in
Asks.
Right.
Well, what the code requires is they either give you a presentation or an annual report.
See, it was
By
never like
spring of
that.
each year, or I think it says, I think it's actually by March 31st, but, so those are all sent out to the commissioners. If you want more, you're more than welcome to ask more. They are your advisory boards. We've collected all of the reports. What you all requested in the meeting in March was to be able to discuss these in case there was something that any of them were asking about you wanted to include in the budget. And we discussed at that meeting that we would add that to this meeting today to discuss whether there was, because the comment was made, how are you going to ever get it in the budget if you don't have an open conversation? So that's why we're doing that today. And that's why, I mean, to just sit back on this one, this was your requested conversation, and we're opening it up. What do you guys want to talk about?
Under the beautification, I mean, we already said we have to talk about their facade type thing for the 41. But they have as an accomplishment the Northport welcome sign on Sumter. Are we all good with caring for that sign?
It needs to be pressure washed so bad, it's not even funny. It's horrible.
So that is something that needs to be probably addressed, whether money needs to go to it or whatever, but that is something coming out of that one that needs to be addressed.
Maybe a maintenance schedule for that sign, because
That's what I would say too.
And I'm not the expert on this, I just do know I've heard, some of the artwork that's out there is designed, I hate to say not look pretty, but it's never
That's
good.
the landscape, yeah.
No, the birds, they're never gonna be shiny. It's not the kind of material they're made from. I just wanna make sure, I know that there's been conversations that we need to paint
The
them.
sign itself can be
No,
painted,
it's the
it can be
tiles
cleaned.
and-
You got water that comes up, and when it dissipates back, it's very ugly down there, It-
now is the time to get out there and pressure
Right,
wash
well,
before
it's-
the rain starts.
Yeah,
I
so.
think that's all that's necessary, just
Because property
occasional
maintenance used to do
pressure
that.
Yeah, we did
every
it, we
6
did it, we
months.
planted it, we maintained it, we pressure washed it, we did all that, and right now is probably the time to go out there, and like they said, it's not rainy season yet, but that pond will fill up, and you can get into the lower cavities and make it look nice now. And it's
You
just,
talk every once a year
Yeah.
and then you'd replant, right?
Yeah,
You
we-
replanted the dune grass and stuff like that, that looked like crap.
right, I've got a few different designs that we did out there, but we also planted the top planters too seasonally, like when the 4th of July, we had red, white, and blue flowers out there. But that was just aesthetics when you came into town. That's the first thing people see is that welcome sign coming off of I-75. And it's the same on like US 41. We had 2 signs. We have one down here. I don't think we still have one down by War Mill Springs. That one's gone, but we have the one down by Cranberry.
Like cranberry is the one they took out.
No, there's still a sign down by Cranberry, or where the racetrack is.
There is,
Yeah.
we
It's like
were
a
waiting-
tower type
We were
thing.
waiting because that's a topic when I first came on board
Behind the
too,
bushes.
that we were talking about making it look nice and having all of those emblems of the civic clubs and
Civic
stuff
groups.
on it, so that it was attractive, but we were putting off doing that until 41 was done.
Yeah, I
Correct.
thought they were gonna take it out because of the 41 widening, okay. that
Since
makes
we're
sense.
talking about the welcome signs, don't forget about the welcome signs down in West Villages and along River Road that say welcome to Northport. I assume, and I don't like assuming, but I assume those are our City of Northport signs.
No, they're West.
They are
they're
not.
West Villages, yeah.
They constructed them.
Are they in the right?
No, I don't think so. I don't think
I'm
so.
pretty sure they're in private property.
But it was part of the mutual agreement.
Okay.
Yeah, it was an
that they-
agreement when.
yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, I remember those meetings.
Part of
It was,
them being
because they have the seal, and there
allowed.
was the whole conversation of can they remove that? And I
Yes.
remember having the conversation of,
that
it
was
was
a
agreed to put those on there.
So who is required to maintain those?
They are.
They are.
We need to make sure that that is being maintained then.
Oh, it is. It's beautiful. That's why Sumter is so sad, because West Villages end, it's gorgeous. You go down Sumter, it's like, what?
But I think we're coming to this year, when's the 41 supposed to be done?
We're still waiting for that
Still
information.
waiting for that answer.
They're just starting another section of it.
Right,
So-
but I mean, that section from Cranberry to Salford. That's where that sign's at.
For the record, Juliana Belia, Public Works Director. I will double check on the current completion date, but it was first slated for summer of 2019. So I will have to get an update, yes. The original deadline was summer of 2019.
Falls within this fiscal year, so if we're gonna address that sign, we need to,
Make
you
sure
know,
that there's.
appropriate some monies or schedule some monies for that. Yeah.
As far as the welcome signs on Sumter Boulevard and Toledo Blade Boulevard, in the last 2 years, we have had a company go out there and clean them and refurbish them. And also, I will speak to Mr. Chuck Speak, the Operations and Maintenance Manager, about any type of additional plantings, because we do have monies in our budget for the plantings adjacent to the welcome sign.
Right, but you can go out there to it. I'm not trying to argue with you, but it may
Right.
need,
No, I just wanted to let
may
you
need
know
a
we
fresh
had a
coat of
company
paint,
come
this,
out.
that, and the other to spruce it up.
When did they come out?
Last year. We hired a company to do it, and we actually, yes.
They did, that's why it's on their checkoff list on this group.
Right, but what they did was, I'm not sure what they did. They may have just cleaned it. They
Well,
may not have
actually,
repainted
yes,
it.
and actually, that welcome sign on Sumter, I know, was not able to be painted. It had to be cleaned.
Right.
It's the way, what it's made out of. The company said it wasn't,
It wasn't paintable material.
correct. It
No,
wasn't
you don't want
paintable material.
It's stucco.
Just
Right.
pressure wash.
But they did pressure wash it. They did
Pretty much
pressure wash it.
stucco, I'm pretty sure.
And I'll find out what the cycle is for the pressure washing, because we're gonna have it on a regular cycle,
Because
to
we
where it's
have
clean.
painted it under property maintenance many, many years ago.
Mhm.
So it has been painted. I don't know why it can't be repainted.
For the bottom portion of it?
No, I'm not saying the bottom, I'm saying the whole sign itself that says welcome to Northport, that's stucco.
Going
I say, I don't know.
On
in on
Sumter.
Sumter?
On
You
Sumter, where it's-
painted that?
Yes.
Wow.
Many, many years ago. It got dismal, it got faded, so we went out there and painted it.
Cool, we can do it.
We'll check it out. We'll check it out.
Can
That's
you-
what the company that
We'll get
did
you
the
a
work
report on
told
it.
him. But we'll get a report. We'll add it in with our
That in
rehabilitation
Toledo,
court, and also
Blade.
Toledo.
And then also the
Mhm.
tower by Cranberry, we need to get a plan for that.
Yeah.
So those 3 items.
Okay.
That was my call.
This group also is bringing up the anti-litter signs. And, I mean, we've got the Sandhill Crane signs and stuff like that. So do you already figure in monies in your budget for signage?
Yes, ma'am.
Is it adequate to cover all these miscellaneous items?
Yes, ma'am.
The signs, yes.
Can I ask a question? You were talking about environmental advisory board? Okay.
Well, that one was the beautification, but go
Oh,
ahead.
sorry.
No, no.
Because you
Go
said
ahead.
Sandhill Cranes, that's why I went environmental, that's where I thought you
Go
were.
ahead.
Environmental advisory board, I was approached to see, they have an ask that they discussed at their last meeting. And I think their ask is like, can the city put aside money, like $20,000 for land purchases for conservation? So I think they're going to, through their liaison, I'm not sure how this is all working because this is so preliminary. They just wanted to make sure that if it's possible to put some money in the budget. And I don't know all the particulars, so I'm just sharing that. It's something they just had discussed at their last meeting. You'll see it in the minutes once they get approved. So.
Looking for an answer, yet we can budget for money for conservation lands, it's just $20,000. If that's what they're asking for, the question's gonna be they're asking you all. and-
Yeah, I'm not saying yes to that.
Yeah, I don't know anything about it at this point,
If
so.
you could make sure it's in there, that way then it's a conversation starter and reminder to have the conversation about it. That's all.
I mean, because we're supposed to be getting back to us a list of the properties or lots that the city owns.
Mhm.
Have we heard back from the county about the escheated lots?
Yes. We just recently spoke to Mr. Lewis again on that one at the county. They are going to follow the current ordinance that was approved back in 2005. So they're gonna sell off the lots, which is what they're directed to do under those. And so now that we have that answer, we will bring you a list of all of the ones that we currently own, since there won't be any additions to the list. And we'll go through those lands.
I would like a list of those escheated, because if they're
Mhm.
gonna sell them, we might wanna buy them.
Exactly.
And that's,
When we get what, it's a minuscule amount of money.
I believe the split was 45-55. I don't off the top of my head remember who
I'll
was the
tell you
45, who
what
was the
that's.
55.
That we get when they sell them?
Yes.
Here's the other thing though, while it may be a minuscule amount of money, I know that the school board put in like lights at the baseball fields, they use it for other projects.
I can tell you the amount of money we got when they originally did it was tremendous.
Yeah.
It's not going to be on this time because there's not any left,
There's not
But we also had a bigger split first time.
but, so.
And again, there's still an argument that the whole thing should not be done in the first place, because this was a mutual agreement. It was not a legal requirement. So the city should really be getting all of those escheated lots. That's an entirely different conversation.
So,
And I'll abide by what is written or whatever they're doing, but I wanna know what they're doing, which ones there are, and
And
what
where
our
are they?
options
Where are they on the
when-
map?
Exactly.
we will get you the list, because we already have the list of all the lots. 'Cause there was a conversation of what was going to be done with them. The county had all of the lots reviewed
Assessed.
in comparison to the original agreement from 2005. All the lots that they're talking about are still from that agreement. So they're following the agreement. That being said, I'm going to look at the agreement as well, because when I spoke to the county administrator about it, he said, now there may be an option in the agreement that neither one of us had thought about until we were talking about it then, of, say there's 30 lots, say there's 200 lots, I don't remember how many there were, but just for conversation, we'll say there's 200, and there's 30 we want. Then maybe there's a process, and neither one of us know the answer to this yet, we're looking at the agreement of, we can get those 30, and that the value of those 30 would be deducted from what we would have gotten had they been sold.
I think they can automatically dedicate the 30 to the city without any.
We're looking at it. I don't believe in what was looked at, we don't believe that was one of the options, but there is we're looking at a secondary option.
Something like 16, I want to say, 16 or 20 of them originally.
And all that was done, and then after that, the rest were all to be sold, and we're at that after that phase, so they're supposed to be sold. Now, they can be sold to us.
But are you saying that this 2000? Yeah, I agree with you. But are you saying that this stock is from the 05? So then it falls under the old agreement.
Which means that everything was done except for the ones being sold.
Which means they give us a larger percentage.
And that's where it's the percentage that we're talking about is from that agreement. So.
There was one large amount of sheeted lots that we had an entire survey done of X, Y, and Z. Something like 6,000, let's just say 6,000, whatever. Okay, so they sold those between the 05 and 2009 era. I think it was actually 2008 is when they stopped. So you're saying that out of that 7,500, 7,800 lots, these lots are still part of that original. Okay, so then that needs to fall under the mutual agreement.
That's what it is.
That doesn't take place after, because that was a different split. That was a higher split. We got more money then.
Yeah,
you get what I'm saying?
I do.
Okay.
And maybe we just need to see the agreement when we're talking about is sheeted lots, so that way then we've got all the information to be able to make a.
She's the one that needs to see it.
You don't want to see it, trust me. I was there.
It's a mess.
It was horrible.
It's a mess. We're warning you.
But what I'm getting back, no matter what we need to do, we need to be able to view that to see what we might want, and maybe the 20,000 that they're talking about could be
Some of those
used, or at
lots.
least viewed in regards to some of those sheeted lots.
I'd like to see where they are on a map too, where.
Oh, they're mostly out in the East End too.
So if you.
There's several places.
Yeah, but I'd like to see it on a map. It doesn't have to be.
And just learning from old experience, by the way, from us old people.
Look at
That-
me again.
I'm talking about me.
Don't look at me.
No, I'm talking about me. If we do sell, or at least we need to talk to the county administrator, but if these sheeted lots are sold in areas where power is not provided, then folks that are purchasing those lots really need to be aware of the utilities that do not exist in that area.
Buyer beware.
Well, because what happened was that they sold thousands of lots in blocks, and it was all about making the maximum profit. That's all that mattered to the county by selling them. And it came out of the administrator's mouth, exactly that quote. So my point is that people were purchasing properties for very little money, don't get me wrong. Well, no, it wasn't very little money, I'm sorry, it was a very large amount of money. And then they went to go build and found out how much it would cost to build, so they kind of got swindled, you know? So, because they went and spent $60,000 on a lot out in the middle of Yorkshire where no water, sewer, or electric can get to them, and in order for them to build a house, they had to come up with another $100,000 to run the power to their house.
Hundreds? I was told $1 million when I was looking at.
It depends on where you're at.
Yeah.
I mean, it depends on the closest line. So my point is that I think we need to do a better job at, you know, a lot of these people don't live around here that are purchasing those lots.
But all of those lots that are for sale have a parcel number on it, and all you have to do is go to the tax assessor's office to see where it's located, and then call the city and find out if there's utilities there.
You
Well,
mean
it says
I
right
have
on your
to do my own
assessment.
work?
No, it says
You mean
right
I
on
have
your
to do my own
assessment,
work?
no utilities provided, but I don't think people comprehend that the distance between your lot and where the closest utility is and how much that's going to affect them. There's more to it than just knowing whether utilities are there or not. I get buyer beware, but I think that in this particular case, I feel like a lot of people were scammed.
Most of
They were
those people
conned.
are also investors.
No, they were not. They weren't. They were individual property owners who have since then either lost those properties because they were sold at such an outrageous price, or...
That was also 2007.
I know.
When the market was,
I know, and that's
So people
what-
were doing it thinking they were getting a great deal.
And my argument was, you are putting these out at the maximum amount of money, not a realistic amount, and you are forcing our market. You're driving it up to do only one thing, crash down. And I don't want to see that again.
Well, that was the whole economy in 2007.
We
Everywhere.
saw things happening in '07 that knew where we were going, but
Trying to get the guys while they could. So are we done with that one?
so what's our direction?
Thank you.
I'm bringing you all a map where all these properties are and the agreement that they fall under. And we'll also look and see if there's any that we would be interested in purchasing.
Plus, map or list or whatever, actually I'd like both of the properties that we currently own in
Yeah, well,
our
that-
city.
Yeah, we'll
Yeah.
get that.
And is a month reasonable to have it brought back to us?
Should be. If we run into any roadblocks, we'll let you know. But I think we can get you that in sometime in May.
Can we get the minutes from that meeting too?
In 2005 meeting?
The one where the agreement was developed or agreed to. The reason I ask that is because I think that there was a agreement to the stock that existed in '05, and then the agreement that was signed was after the fact. You get what I mean?
I do, and the city attorney can pipe down. I think the only thing that matters is what's in the written agreement. Talk about whatever you want in minutes, but if it's not in the written agreement, it doesn't matter.
I'm trying to remember where that agreement went, if it was, because we went to court and it was arbitration and we had to come together as a. Okay. Anyways, when was the sheeted lots in this map that you're gonna get was acquired, so that we got an idea of what the timeline was?
And if you could also just see if the city can buy it or if they can be donated to the city.
That's in the agreement, right?
Whether, we'll look at it, because the consideration that we talked about is whether or not, like I said, say there's 10 that we want. Is there a provision in the agreement that it can just offset what our portion is, or do we actually have to go through the process of buying them? A net process versus a outside the agreement process.
And there was a certain amount of them that they were supposed to dedicate to us. Did we get all of those? That's another thing we need to find out, because last I remember, they were supposed to dedicate so many, but out of that so many of them were scrub jay habitat and unbuildable, and while we were trying to use it for the swap idea that we could expand our government use facilities, they became useless because they were unbuildable at the time.
I understand that you want, land to do that too, but I would love to have the land for scrub jay also.
Well, that's for the future, yeah, but I'm just.
Preserving it. I mean.
I'm totally thinking of that particular time frame, the agreement and the reasoning for those pieces of properties to be given to us was to expand government use and to use as land swap, because the land bank was part of our comprehensive plan. And those sheeted lots were per our comprehensive plan, supposed to be used for that.
And I don't know if there's an understanding of how important this topic is to the citizens. I mean, it is huge. We have the advisory boards talking about it. We have people, I've got an empty lot next to me, I want to buy it. We've got businesses saying the city owns the property, but they won't talk to me about it. You know, how can I buy it? I mean, out in the community, this is a topic that is discussed. I mean, we are their government. And if we own that property, they do too. So there's an interest, you know, within it. So it's an important topic.
And I understand that, and if there's, you know, a piece of property, I know that we've had one resident wants to know about buying the piece of property next to them, and we've been waiting to get this listed as well. And then there's others that have wanted to buy property the city didn't have an active desire to sell.
Right.
And the question that I've been asked before is, well, how much would the city sell it for? And if it's not on a for sale list, the answer is I don't have a price, but if anybody ever wants to make an offer to the city to buy a piece of property, we will bring that forward. It's kind of, because the dilemma for, in my opinion of that is, they're looking for us, to give them a selling price and they'll accept. If they want to buy something that we have that we're not in the process of actively selling, they give us a price.
Then we consider.
And we can evaluate. If we have, you know, like one of the other conversations that brought up recently is about a land bank. Well, if the city has a piece of property that's in a land bank, it's not going to be actively be for sale. If you want something, you know, in order for me to sell it, I'd have to, you know, find out what it's worth. Well, I'm not just going to go out there and do an appraisal on a piece of land, sink the money into it, the staff hours to do an appraisal that isn't necessarily up for sale. But if you came to me and told me, you know, you have, you know, if I came to you, said, you have a piece of property I'm going to, in my mind, it's worth $50,000. I'm going to offer you the $50,000. Now you have the opportunity to say yes or no. You have a dollar amount. You can evaluate it. Whether or not you want to do a formal appraisal, the city would go through that process unless we said, you know what, we knew for other reasons. We looked at the property next to it and it sold recently for $300,000. Probably not going to overly entertain a $50,000 offer. That being said, you know, somebody's got to start that ball rolling. I think is kind of where I'm getting. And one of the ones I've heard out there is that they want us to start that ball rolling, make an offer to them that they can accept or not, when they're the ones that want something. So, and I have a hard time investing taxpayer dollars when the other side's not willing to do that.
That needs to be clarified. I mean, because the public does think that they can just go in and say, how much do you want for that? And to have it be public knowledge that nothing is for sale unless we put it up for sale needs to be pretty much declared.
But at the same token, everything is for sale if the price is being willing to be paid.
I don't
If it's a
know.
land bank,
No,
because
no.
a land bank is, the whole idea of a land bank is so that you can swap the properties to do things like the Price Project, to do things like a secondary east-west route that happens to have undeveloped property that's individually owned. Things like what we did at Atwater Park. I mean, that's the whole intent is to.
But if somebody came up to you
think
and
your statement
said, hey, that parcel right there, how much you willing to sell it to me, and it's not for sale. Okay, great, I'm gonna give you $10 million for that piece of property. It's for sale now.
Yeah, that's what I think.
That's where I
I
was
think your
going.
underlying statement is basically just about anything's for sale if the price is right.
Exactly.
If somebody wants to offer, you know, we can have a land bank, and like you said, the point of it is to be able to do certain things in the future. Well, if I have one piece of land, and you give me the value to where I can go buy 50 of them for what I sell that one piece of land for, now I'm actually in a better position.
I get that. I'm working on reality, not.
And I'm going to be open and honest on this. One of the reasons I want to see where the properties are that we own is because I was made aware that we own property in the industrial park. So why does the city own property in an industrial park where it's not for sale for a business to come in? You know, they're pretty much blocked from coming in because it's government owned in an industrial park. So it's questions like that that I would like to have an understanding of why we have property in an industrial park and what's the purpose for it, and why we're not selling it. So that's why openly, in front of everybody, that's why I want to see it.
And that's where the
That's
piece of
why I wanna
property
see
is.
the
That's where
list.
one of the individuals has said, well, what do you sell it for? Rather than come forward with, well, I want to pay this for it. So it's a chicken
But
or
it
egg thing.
wasn't, the original person sought for that, did not communicate properly with the people interested. It's no longer in the mix. But had there been a public knowledge that nothing's for sale. I mean, it's our property, it's not for sale. If you're interested in it, bring us a price. And that way, they're not waiting for somebody to come back.
Sounds good.
All right, I'm going to reiterate on the joint management what I stated when they do meet, because last time they met was February 1st of 18, and they meet once a year. So when they do that, they speak about a mural or some type of art on the performing arts building.
Maybe art funds can be used to help fund that too. We've got a lot of money in the art fund.
Right.
That was something I brought up as well, was that the art, that the Performing Arts Center may be in need of improvements by now, because it's been so many years. And that while we did invest in the original building of it, is there a way that we can say, listen, we're willing to help with whatever is needed, but remember in return, we have the pool, we have the aquatic center, we have the, one hand washes the other. So, but I would think that by now, some of that is pretty outdated. And there may be a need for us to
I know that the Performing Arts building is being retrofitted, refurbished, or.
Because of the security portion of it.
Oh, that's the purpose of it, okay.
Yeah,
So they
because-
figure they do everything at the
Right,
same time.
because
Now I understand why they're doing
Northport
it.
High School is unique because it has that.
Most challenging.
Yeah, it is the most challenging. So they're trying to find a way, which they have a preliminary design, to enclose it and still allow the public access to the ticket booth, and so that's why they're doing it.
That's why they're doing it.
So, which is all great, but it doesn't help the improvements that's needed within that
Gotcha.
actual,
The sound system outdated is
Yeah.
the AV system.
How about the chairs? Hello, it's been how long? Jeez.
Has anybody done
These
I don't know if
chairs
it's.
need to be replaced. They're killing me.
Well, we did try those ones out up there that were pretty spiffy. At the Supreme Court.
They were nice chairs.
They were very nice.
Right?
You guys
Very
got some
nice.
of the Supreme Court?
We did. It was awesome.
Did you see the jealousy just pipe up?
Chief Justice chair was the one I got to try out.
They had to pull me out. But,
Next year you just have to go to Tallahassee with us.
yeah.
Oh, the Florida Supreme Court.
Oh, so now the jealousy just disappeared. Gotcha.
She's not as jealous anymore.
She went down a tier.
Federal will go in next year, so you'll have to go to DC.
Mayor, I don't have anything more on these reports myself personally. I think it's wonderful that they have brought these reports back to us. Thank you to our advisory board folks and compiling all this. It's great to have these reports. I appreciate it.
I already put the ask in that I know about.
Yeah.
She already covered this, few of the other ones that I heard about, so.
Mr. Pearson?
Oh, I've already chimed in.
Mr. Emmerich?
Okay. There's only one thing that I want to ask, and this is off this topic, but I think it's important to start looking at. It's been almost a year since the Y came to us about a child facility, about the daycare center. And at that time, we gave some ideas and asked them, please be patient, hold on. And in that year, absolutely zero has taken place.
I thought we'd be addressing that in our CIP. That's why I didn't
Well,
bring it up.
I just want to bring it up for the board to start considering. I think it's time to really just start looking at this facility. And so I just wanted to make that point here.
So are we
Well, I
just,
think getting the
This is more
map of the
initial
land.
communication at the end of the.
I think getting the maps, letting us know where we have property is the first step to that.
Or,
Well, and let me just say what it is that I have done, because I'm on their board.
I'm actually having
And-
lunch with them, I think, tomorrow.
Oh, good. Well, I had sent them, because it was my suggestion to go and just move the daycare center to where the old fire station was. And the reason is that the infrastructure already exists. The utilities are already there from the old fire station.
Where's the old
So,
fire station?
it was literally right in,
It's in the complex?
in the same area.
Oh, it's in the complex? Okay.
Because remember that the daycare and the pool and all that complex service certain people that live in that area. So moving it to Toledo, Blade, and Price is not conducive to what's needed, I guess is what I'm, so my point is that the open field, which is right across from the water department, I would say.
Water,
Yeah.
not wastewater, but it's the water plant, right there on Northport Boulevard.
And so that used to be where our old fire station was.
So across the street,
Same side as
Same
where it
parking lot,
is.
everything. Yes.
it's
okay.
basically the same,
It's the entrance to Dallas White Park.
yes.
If you're pulling in, it would be to the left was where, or to the right, I'm sorry, where it used to be.
And it's
We
now just
moved
a
it.
big open space where people park at.
Yeah, park for the
parades.
art
Okay.
center.
Well, no, they don't park.
No, no, they don't park there for the art center.
I do. When we have events, I pull up in that field every time. It's always lined with people parking there.
I've never seen it for that. But anyways, regardless, that's where it is.
That's where the,
It has the utilities that go directly to it because the fire department was there. And so I was thinking that on a site planning, yeah, I see them. That for a site reasons, that because that stuff has already been run to that property, that it would be just less expensive to build a daycare there, So they got the overview of an old 1974 site plan from planning that showed them exactly where everything was, so. I guess they're looking at that particular parcel so that it wouldn't be such a hard shift and move. But again, I figured we would discuss all this during CIP.
well, I knew I had to have lunch with them. I just
But
wanted to
thank
bring
you.
it up and see, Mr. Lear, does Mr. Newkirk want to say?
Yeah, I did
He calls
hear,
me a ninja, but he just showed up.
I did,
As if he was slicker and they couldn't see him.
I heard you speaking about the piece of property off of Shampos Way there, the open field across. I just wanted to let everyone know that in that area right there, that's where our surface water wells are located. And in that stretch of land between Shampos and the Cocoa Plum Canal, we have a raw water line, we have a reclaimed line, and we have force main lines in there. So I know it's a big area, it looks wide open, but there is quite a bit of utility infrastructure underneath the ground there.
That's the whole idea. It's all there already.
Yeah, but you gotta find the right place to put it.
Yeah, you wouldn't want to put nothing on top of those lines.
Now it
No,
goes.
but it runs parallel to the
Well,
water.
But those lines the force main is a pressurized line, and so you wouldn't be able to hook up to that. But there is a lift station at the Art Guild.
Yeah, I know. But those lines were put in place prior to the fire station, except for the ASR well.
The only one that was in place before the fire station would have been the existing force main, which is, we relocated that too and made it out of a different material.
So we need to find out where those
We don't-
different utility
We can
things
tell you
are
exactly
located.
where all the utility lines are on a piece of land.
Excellent.
Probably
Thank
spray
you.
paint those lines too, couldn't you?
Yes.
Yeah, that'd be helpful.
You got it.
Instead of on that hill next to the thing, they removed that portable, why not,
It's too
There.
small
So why,
for the space. Because really, you know what, the thought process is to not just worry about the daycare, but to incorporate the children's clothes closet, the art center.
thank you.
To do something, and that's,
Okay,
that's.
all I keep hearing is YMCA, YMCA, building for
Well, because
YMCA,
the
YMCA.
YMCA is-
I want to make
building a
sure
forum, you
that
can't
it
do
is
that.
a community asset for other uses
The
than just
reason
YMCA.
why I said YMCA and why I sent it to them is because they're the ones who are getting the engineer to work up the project and the design.
Right.
And how much will it cost?
Right.
So that's why,
Vice Mayor, whenever I brought this up before, I brought up an entire master plan
yes.
to work on that entire area, and then even possibly bring it into the East End side of things, but that wasn't working out. So in the meantime, we just have this building that is continually getting worse and worse and worse. And
But it's
we're
not
gonna have to
just-
do something, yes, I agree.
I
The
want
art
to be
center's
sure.
one, yeah, I want that entire area
Okay,
done
so-
up, but I don't know where we're at with
So we
it.
need to call it the Sam Sharpos area rejuvenation or something
Yeah.
than just the YMCA building. Because that has a totally different connotation than the entire
Well,
book.
and the
My
daycare
intention
may
today
have
was to
be
bring up
separate.
just the daycare to
Yeah.
see where the board is with that, because before, everything was just kind of, well, let's wait, let's see where the, the boys club is and all of this stuff. But in the meantime, this is just continuing to happen, and we haven't really moved towards anything towards it.
I think I was the only one who still wanted to continue with the Dallas White Master Plan.
Yeah. Well, that's what I was
Yeah,
saying.
but I
And
think,
so that needs to be gone over, so you're looking at the whole
That's
thing
CIP stuff.
instead of just
Yeah,
a
that's
daycare.
Right.
right.
And
That's
so
CIP.
I'd like
No,
to
I
see the
agree with
Dallas White Master Plan put back in place.
And I don't
That's a
oppose
CIP
that.
That's a CIP issue.
Right, that's why I thought this was all a C, okay. But my point is that while the master plan is wonderful, there is a priority for those buildings right now. Like, we can't wait
That's kind of what I was
2,
trying to
3
get at.
years, like
To
we've
go through
seen happen
the
in these
studies and-
master plans before anything's done. And that's why we as a commission prioritize those areas being the YMCA, the art center, and the children's clothes closet.
But it wasn't in our strategic plan, folks. And that's what we have to go by, is
I
our
thought it
strategic.
was.
No, it is not.
I mean, the strategic plan is pretty localized, life safety and well-being.
It was the out east one, is what was in the master plan.
Thank you.
And when,
That's what
and
we were
when-
talking about,
and when
strategic
it was
planning.
voted, the majority said no to the Dallas White Master Plan, you kind of chuck that baby out. I mean, I still want in the strategic plan the thing out east to go, land looking
Oh,
at.
that needs to be
But-
done, yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, it would be wonderful if we could combine the two, because then you get more bang for your buck.
You
But in the
possibly,
meantime,
you
we have-
possibly
We have
could.
kids that are in an unsafe position,
But
and
that
so.
is the wise issue. I
That's
mean,
the
it is
wise
our
issue.
building, but we are not funding, with taxpayer dollars, a 501c3's building.
Well, I mean, that's
But
the
why not?
discussion, that's the
Because
discussion.
you don't put
that's-
tax dollars to a private entity.
Well, first
And
of all,
they-
you
they
wouldn't
told me
go
they're
and
looking
give it-
for their own
Yeah, it's our
supporters.
It's our
building.
building, they would be paying lease, they would be
Yeah.
leasing the building from us, it's our building.
That-
And if they ever move, we would have that building left to lease.
And you can't get a financial donor to dedicate X amount of dollars to build that building without them having a guaranteed land lease for X amount of years. Like, that's not,
And that stuff can be talked about. But
Right.
when you start talking about putting public dollars into one entity,
That's why I
that's
have a
why
it's
problem.
I
not
think.
one entity.
Yeah, no, I'm talking
But-
about the building, I'm not talking about the entity.
Okay,
Yeah.
but
The
you
building is
keep
going to be
saying the
used
why,
for
the why,
that
the why.
one entity.
And
Well,
it
that's
needs
what
to
everybody
be
understands.
Dallas White Park
Thank you.
project or
But that
something.
one
But if I said
building
Dallas
can
White Park
also
project,
be.
you wouldn't be thinking of the specific point I
Right,
was talking
right.
about, which was the daycare that
Because
we
we
had discussed a
prioritize
year
the
ago.
daycare and
But
the
we
arts.
don't have a daycare, we have a building. That's the point I'm getting at. You're focusing on the Y's daycare, and that's not us.
That's not the
We're the
city's.
building. Now, if the building's dilapidated and we need to raise a building, then that's what we need to do. The purpose of it.
So let me say the why is a description of the building that I'm talking about. This way everybody understands. I'm not trying to parcel points here. I was using that as so everybody understood the building that I'm talking about. Because if I just said we need to fix a dilapidated building, well, is it the art center? Is it the closet, or is it the daycare? Well, when I say, right, yeah, it absolutely could. But I was specifically wanted to talk about what I wanted to bring up was that building that the daycare is in, that those children are having to.
Could be a multi-use building.
Absolutely. It could be anything you want it to be. It could be 5 times the size and utilized in 6 different ways. It could be an entire strip mall type of stuff for, but there's 100 ways to do it.
Can you get us the when we discussed that whole campus and all that and the supposable
Because around this time last year, give or take.
We talked about it several times.
Yeah.
And I thought we had
the big
direction.
discussion with the master plan, all that was wrong.
The direction was to not do anything because it wasn't in the.
There's more direction. That's why I want to see the meeting.
Search for it.
Because there's
When
more.
we had the conversation about the Dallas White Master Plan, is that one?
But there's more than one meeting. Not only that, but I thought we had a budget meeting that we talked about it. The master plan, yes, and then I think it was its own.
They gave a presentation, the Boys and Girls Club gave a presentation.
I mean, we've talked about it several times, so it might be just a city clerk doing a quick research of the topic. So I want to see all the things we discussed.
You have some backup.
But I swear there was direction
The
given.
Dallas White campus actually is in the strategic plan?
It is in the strategic plan, and in the minutes from that discussion, where we left it was that we were talking about a P3, and we were going to bring back the discussion about Dallas White once the P3 was brought forward. And
Thank you for reminding us about the P3. We're waiting for information about
Yeah,
it.
we already got the information.
I think we're.
It's coming back for second
Yes,
reading.
yes.
And I fully remembered that. I also know that we have done nothing, for these children right now. And that was just the conversation that I wanted to have.
But I thought we made sure everything was all right.
It's all safe. Everything there is safe. That's because that was what my biggest concern was.
Right.
If they're in a building that is unsafe or insecure or anything, then that's a whole different issue. But we were given assurances, while it may not be pretty and it may not be fancy and it may not be everything that everybody wants, it's still safe. If it's not safe, then we have to have another conversation and figure out what we're gonna do with that to make sure that those children are safe, and why are we allowing them in there if it's not safe?
Right.
But it's been assured over with fire and police and Parks and Rec that the building is safe. Is it conducive? No. But that is the choice that the YMCA has because they signed the lease. That has nothing to do with us and our building. It's my take on it.
Well, it's obviously a big discussion.
Yeah.
I brought it
That's
up.
why I was saving it for capital
No,
improvements.
No, you're fine. You're fine. I just wanted to bring it up and make sure we were still remembering this.
That she said that it was relevant and it was to be continued when we finalized the P3. But the Dallas White Master Plan was not funded. It was
No, it was
rejected.
funded. It's part of the funding. We just didn't move
Go.
forward
Nope.
with it.
It's next year's.
200,000, right?
It was-
Next year.
It was
There's
pushed
no money in
off.
it this year.
Yeah.
Right, but we were waiting, we put it off for next year, the master plan, that was during budget. That was prior to any conversation about the YMCA campus and all that.
No,
It was
during the
after.
time.
It was like
Because
during the
I
same
was
time or right
shocked.
after.
I was shocked that with that discussion going on, that we wouldn't have a study. I knew the P3 needed to be finalized, but I was shocked that we weren't going ahead with some kind of a
Well,
master
wasn't the
plan.
study supposed to, I thought it was only focusing on Scout House baseball fields and the
Everything.
use
The
of the
entire
waterways.
The entire thing,
Entire thing.
the entire complex.
Okay, well, that's why I need to see this meeting and these minutes
All right.
and when this conversation was, because I don't remember that.
Anybody else have questions?
Well, what exactly is the city manager getting for us, so that way then we make sure he has clear direction?
Yeah, but
I think if you say YMCA, that will help, because that was pretty much the primary conversation.
Well, that was how the whole
And-
conversation began.
Right, and then we talked about the need
That's
for
why
the
we lost
other buildings that need to be updated, and how do we incorporate all of them into this idea? So that's what it was under. It would have been initiated.
I think that what you asked for was everything related to the master plan and this area of when it was discussed, minutes, was there a presentation or anything done? So, I mean, I jokingly said everything, the word Dallas White on it, it's related to that topic when you guys talked about it, I believe it was last year.
I believe it was last year too.
So, we'll get with the clerk's office, find anything they have.
Because Commissioner Lind was on.
Commissioner Yates was
And
still here
Yates
too.
was still
Yeah,
here
I
too.
know Yates was still here, but.
Yep. Sound good?
That's it, meeting adjourned.